This is the chapter number 2 of the Complete Blender Product Animation course, a 7 chapter series where you are learning how to create real, commercial quality product ads from scratch. In the previous chapter, we focused on a serum bottle where you learned glass, liquid, lighting, and the overall product fundamentals. And in this chapter, we are stepping into something more precise, a luxury watch, because working with watches teaches you one of the most important skills in product rendering, controlling reflections on metal surfaces. We are going to build everything from scratch, starting with modeling the watch body, strap, and key details, then setting up clean topology for a polished high-end look, and after that, we'll focus on materials like creating realistic metal, glass, and dial elements that respond correctly to light. Then comes the most important part, the lighting. We'll set up controlled highlights and reflections to bring out the form of the watch and give it that premium advertisement style finish. Once the look is established, we'll move into animation, like creating smooth, cinematic camera movements and subtle product motion to enhance realism. Then finally, we'll render everything to achieve a clean, high-end commercial result. So by the end of this chapter, you will also have a premium portfolio-ready product animation. So to begin with, here I have this new Blender file opened, and the first thing that I'm going to do here is to delete all the default objects in the scene, which is this cube, the light, and the camera. So press A to select all and X to delete. And now the first thing that we have to do before starting with the modeling process is to get some reference images that we can use. And for that, I decided to visit this Rolex website where I found this Rolex watch, which looks pretty good for the kind of watch I'm looking for. And you can even take a look at the variations. Like you can change the dial color or you can change the bezel. So in this particular case, I think we can go with this green one. So I'll be downloading this reference image, which is having this front view of the watch. And I'll also add a link to download this image in the description box so you can download it from there. Now to import the reference image over here in the scene, I'll press Shift A, then go to Image in the Add menu and select Reference Image. Then this window will open from where I have to browse that particular location where I have the image saved. In this case, I have the image saved over here, so I'll select it and add it in the scene. Now currently it will get added in a weird rotation. So to fix this, I'll press Alt R to reset the rotation. You can even check this over here that in all the three axes we have the rotation equal to 0 degrees. And now I'll go to the front view, then rotate this image in the x-axis by 90 degrees. And this will give me a nice reference image that I can use to model the watch. Now, just like I told you in the last chapter, in this one also we'll try to use this image only as a reference and not as a complete copy of the watch model that we'll make. We'll try to add as many details as possible like the dial of the watch, the logo, this cutout in the glass, these small details. But if needed, we'll try to make some changes in the model also. But for now, to keep the thing simple, we'll begin with modeling the case of the watch. And you can see here that the shape around the circular dial that we have is what we are going to model, and for that I'm going to use the circle object. So I'll basically try to keep the shape like this outer part of the dial that you have, and then we'll try to add these details or basically this shape. So to practically do it, I'll press Shift A, then go to Mesh and add a circle, then go to this Add Circle menu, and in this we have the default 32 vertices, but I think that we should slightly increase the number of vertices to, let's say, 64. Then I'll rotate this in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Let's go to the edit mode and scale this down like this. Now you have to make sure that it covers this circular part properly first. So let's zoom in, and I think we should slightly scale this up like this. Then press E to extrude, right click to cancel, and S to scale this up like this. And this will create a nice circular ring-like structure which is covering the dial. And now for this part of the case that is remaining, both on the top as well as the bottom, we'll take some of these vertices, try to extrude them so that we can basically create that particular shape that we have. But before that, I'll be selecting this inner loop of vertices by holding the Alt key and left clicking. And I need to add a face over here. But if I press F to fill the face, then this will create an N-gon. And I had already explained this to you in the previous chapter that in order to get a perfect topology, or basically the arrangement of vertices, it is usually suggested to go with the quad faces as far as possible and avoid the n-gons or the tri-faces. And in this case also, let's try to get the quad faces here. So for that, I'll press Ctrl Z to undo. And then with this vertex loop selected, I'll press Ctrl F to open the face menu and select the grid fill. Then I'll go to this grid fill menu on the bottom left corner and try to change the offset value so that I can get an even better topology. Now, as I told you before, we have to extrude the vertices here to create these details, like this part which is surrounding the strap. But before we do that, we can do another thing which will make our work easier. Like you can see here, that the shape that we are trying to make is completely symmetrical, both in the x-axis as well as the y-axis. I'm not talking about the details in the material here, but only about the basic shape of the dial that we are making. So that, as you can see here, is completely symmetrical. And as a result, even if I just delete the vertices both in the x and y axis and then I use the mirror modifier to duplicate them, we'll still get the same result and we'll no longer have to manually make the changes in the symmetrical part. So to do this thing, I'll select all these vertices here, then with the shift key hold it, select the ones over here. Let's deselect these. So we're basically trying to cover the vertices on the symmetrical part with respect to this in the x-axis, which is basically this part over here where my cursor is right now, and then this lower part which is symmetrical in the y-axis also. Then I'll press X and select delete vertices, and this will leave us with just this much part which we can easily mirror using the mirror modifier. So what I'll do is I'll again go to the edit mode and I'll also select these vertices over here that I forgot to delete and press X to delete the vertices. You can check the symmetry by the origin point or the 3D cursor also, which is over here in the middle. Now I'll go to the modify properties, click on add modifier, then in the generate, select the mirror modifier, and by default it will set the x-axis, but we also want the same thing in the y-axis, so I'll turn it on. Let's also turn on the clipping option, which might help us later on when we make some changes in the shape, because if I turn it off and try to press A to move this somewhere, you can notice that this basically breaks into 4 different pieces. But if I turn it on and then try to move it around by pressing G, then no such thing happens. So we'll keep this setting turned on. And now you can see that if I, let's say, select this particular vertex and press G to move it, then the same change will be visible in the x-axis as well as the y-axis. So this is exactly what we needed for the model. And now the thing that I'm going to do is I'll basically extrude the vertices that I have over here, which is basically this vertex loop, in order to form this shape over here. So for this, let's say I select this particular vertex and I think I should slightly slide it by pressing G twice and shift it over here so that it properly aligns. And then I'll press E to extrude this, let's say till over here, and left click. Now before we continue with modeling the rest of the shape, another important thing that I think we should be doing is to reduce the opacity of this image. And for this, I'll go to the object data properties, then go to opacity and reduce this to, let's say, 0.5. Other than this, if I change the angle, I also think that I should rotate both of these in the x-axis by 90 degrees and then go to the top view. And I also think we should rotate this in the z-axis by 180 degrees, or maybe I should also rotate this in the y-axis by 180 degrees so that we get a proper view from the top view. Like you might have to change this depending on the orientation of the objects in the scene, but for me this works totally fine. So we'll continue with modeling this shape that we have over here. And for this, what I'm gonna do is I'll be selecting the vertices over here, let's say till this point, and I have to make this shape, which you can model using multiple ways. Like one of the ways can be to just take this vertex and press E to extrude it, then you will have to fill the faces. But what I'm going to do is something much simpler. I'll keep these vertices selected, then press E to extrude them like this in the x-axis. And now I'll cut the region that I want using the knife tool. So to use the knife tool, I'll press K. Then if I left click over here, this will add a vertex and I'll continue to trace the shape that I want. So I'll simply take the cursor over here and left click, and then for the last one I'll select this pre-existing vertex and left click, and to exit from the knife tool I'll press enter to confirm. Then with these faces selected over here, I'll press X to delete the faces because we don't need that, and this will give us a nice shape that we needed. Also, I think I should select this and slightly push this. Similarly, let's also push this, basically slide this over here, and you might have to do this thing with the other vertices also depending on whether or not it's looking perfect with respect to the background reference image. And after this, I'll be selecting this vertex over here and slightly push it down to create this angle over here. And now if I try to change the angle, you can see that we have a nice shape that we needed, but it currently does not have any thickness at all. So to fix this, I'll press A to select all, press E to extrude this up in the Z axis like this. And then for the bottom part, I'll be using the mirror modifier. But before that, I need to delete the vertices, or basically the faces at the bottom, because that will be covered anyways, so it won't be visible. But to do that, I have to go to the bottom view. And for that, the shortcut is to press Ctrl 7 on the numpad. This will take us to the bottom view. Press 3 for the face selection mode and select all the faces over here. Then to delete these, press X and select delete faces. Here I also think that we should delete this face loop, or maybe I should just select this face over here, hold down the Control and Shift key, select this one, press X to delete the faces, and let's do the same thing with this one also. I'll select this face, then with the Control and Shift key, I'll select this one and delete them by pressing X. Now I'll go back to the object mode, and in the modifiers, let's select the Z axis in the mirror modifier. That will basically give us the complete model of the case. Now to add some details, I'll go to the edit mode and I'll be selecting this edge over here, and I basically want to make this shape a little bit rounded or curved. So to add this detail, I'll be using the bevel tool. So I'll press Ctrl B to apply the bevel, and I'll set the number of segments to, let's say, 4, or maybe let's go with 5. Then left click and I'll change the width to 0.1, or maybe let's slightly increase this to 0.125 like this. And I think this looks completely fine for the watch model. Now these values here might be different for you, like you might want to set the number of segments to something low like 4 or maybe 3, and even the width here you can set it to anything that you like. Basically play around with these values, and depending on the type of result that you want, you would have to set these values accordingly. So take a look at the reference image if you want to, but currently I think that these values are giving me a nice result, so we'll go with this. Now if I take a close look over here and try to change the angle, you can see that we have some duplicate vertices over here which are causing this formation of the face, which is this selected one. And you might think that it is not a major problem, but if I just go to the object mode and then add the subdivision surface modifier to it by using the shortcut Control 1, then you can see that this is the result that we get. We are getting this issue in the geometry, which is because of this face that is over here. And to fix this thing, what I'm going to do is I'll go to the vertex selection mode by pressing 1, and then I'll be selecting this vertex, and then with the shift key hold it, select this one which is adjacent to it, then press M, and this will open the merge menu, and from this I'll select merge at first. What this does is that it merges the two vertices based on the one that you selected first. So on merging them together, their final position is the one which we selected first. You can even select merge at last if you want the position of the last selected vertex, or if you want them to be merged at the center, you can select merge at center. But in this case, I decided to choose the merge at first option. Now in a similar way, I'll go over here, turn on the X-ray mode by pressing Alt C, and then select the two vertices here, press M, and select merge at first. Now let's zoom out, and you will notice that most of the issue that we had because of the geometry is now gone, but it's still not looking completely perfect. Like we can see some issues over here which are basically because of these faces over here, and you can see that this one is a tri face, and as I explained you before, in terms of topology, we usually prefer to keep only the quad faces, that is the faces that are made up of four vertices. So that is why we are getting this problem here, but we can easily solve this by adding some holding edges to the geometry. We'll see how we can do that later on, but before that, I also noticed that there's some issue over here, which is because of some duplicate vertices over here also. If I just select this and try to press G to move it, you can notice that we have one more vertex below it which is causing this issue in the geometry of the object. So what I'll do is I'll select both of them by using the selection tool like this, press M to merge at center, or even better than this, I think I can press A to select all of these, press M, and one of the options in merge is merge by distance. What this does is it basically merges all the vertices which are within this distance of 0.0001 meters, and this is a very small distance if you compare it to the size of the object we are dealing with. So in most of the cases, any two vertices which are kind of overlapping or very close to each other will be merged into a single vertex if you use this option. So now if I select this vertex and try to press G to move around, you will observe that we no longer have any duplicate vertices. Apart from this, another issue that we have here is that this particular face is an n-gon, so we can easily fix this thing by adding some vertices on this particular edge, and then we can connect them to the vertices over here. So to do this thing, with the cursor over this edge, I'll press Ctrl R, and you can see that we get a yellow point over here. Now if I use the scroll wheel to increase the number of cuts to 4, then left click and right click to cancel the movement, then we'll get these 4 vertices here that we can use to connect to these vertices. Now to make a quad face here, I need to fill a face between these 4 vertices. So first of all, I'll select this existing face and press X to delete only faces, then press 1 for the vertex selection mode. Let's select the 4 vertices over here and press F to fill the face. Then I'll select these 4, press F and continue the same thing for the remaining vertices. Now what I'm going to do is I'll select this particular edge here and try to make the geometry smooth by sliding it by pressing G twice and placing this over here. Similarly, let's do the same with the other ones also. I'll slightly slide them backwards so that we get a smoother geometry. And other than this, I'll go back to the object mode, right click to apply shade auto smooth, and then I'll go to the modify properties and let's also use some bevel modifier. I'll place this above the subdivision and the mirror. Let's increase the number of segments to 2, and this will give us a very nice and clean structure. I'll also go to the subdivision modifier and increase the levels to a value of 2. And other than this, I also think that I should fix this n-gon over here. You can see that this is also an n-gon and not a quad face. So we can fix this. I'll select this entire face, press X and select delete only faces. Then I'll press Ctrl R to add 4 loop cuts here. Then simply select the 4 vertices here, press F to fill the face. And instead of selecting them one by one, what I can do is I can press 2 for the edge selection mode, select this edge and press F like this to fill the faces automatically, and this will give me a nice clean topology for the case of the watch. You can check if there is any error anywhere, like in terms of geometry or topology or maybe any duplicate vertices anywhere in the edit mode. And if any of that exists, you might have to do the cleanup work, like delete some vertices, merge them, and try that as much as possible you're working with the quad faces. Like over here, I have this one tri face, but it's not causing any problem in the geometry right now, so we can work with that. Other than this, I don't really think we have any n-gons or tri faces in the geometry. But yes, what I think we can do is I can just select this, press G twice to slide it slightly back so that we get this nice curved look. Or maybe I can also select this one and push it in the y-axis like this. Now to move ahead in modeling process, I think I need the reference image back. So instead of adding it in the scene right now, what I'll do is I'll create a new window here by taking my cursor over this edge and left clicking like I just did. Then click over here to change this window to the image editor and click here to select the reference image that we have. So in this, we have modeled this case, and the next thing that I'm going to model is this outer dial. And for this, I'll go to the edit mode, press 2 for the edge selection mode and select this edge loop. Let's select this completely like this. Press Shift D to create a duplicate, right click to cancel. And now I want to convert this duplicate into a separate object. So for this, I'll press P for the separate menu and select separate by selection. Then go back to the object mode, select the circular ring that we just duplicated and separate it into a new object. Then go to the edit mode, press A to select all. To give this some thickness, I'll press E to extrude, right click to cancel, press S to scale this down. And I think I'm getting this error because the placement of the vertices is not correct. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to the object mode, select the circular ring, press X to delete it, and now I'll go back to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad and I'll try to add a circle object, and we'll use that to create the outer dial that we have here. So press Shift A, then go to mesh and select the circle. Then in the number of vertices, I'll change this to 64 so that we can work with a much better resolution for the circle. Then go to the edit mode, press S to scale this down, Let's enable the X-ray mode, and I'll scale this up like this so that it properly covers the entire case body. Then I'll go to the front or the side view. Let's push it up in the Z-axis till over here. Now after this, I'll go to the edit mode, press E to extrude, right click to cancel, then press S to scale this down, and to give this some height, I'll move this up in the Z-axis like this, and this is giving me a nice shape. But to check if it's really matching the reference image or not, I'll unhide the reference image from the scene, then go to the top view, press Alt Z to turn on the X-ray mode, and I think I need to scale this up slightly so that the circle matches the dial properly. Then after this, I'll select this loop, press E to extrude it down in the Z-axis like this. And I also think that we should push this vertex loop slightly more upwards like this so that we can have some more gap between the glass that we'll add here on the top and the disk that we have here, basically this green colored disk on which we have the numbers, the hands of the clock and everything else. So this much height should work fine. And other than this, I'll now press Ctrl R to add a loop cut here and push it above. Press Shift D to create a duplicate. Press P to separate this into a new object. Then select that object, go to the edit mode, press A to select all. And I think we should use this object as the green circular disc. So we need to fill the face first, which we can easily do by pressing F to fill the face. And to see if everything is proper or not, I'll move it slightly above in the Z axis by let's say 0.2 meters, and you can see that we now have this face filled. I don't even think we need to give it any thickness because that won't be visible in the scene. So we can go with this. I'll undo this so that its position is back here. Then I'll select this, right click to apply shade auto smooth. And I also think that we should give this some subdivision surface modifier. So press Ctrl 1 on the numpad, or maybe let's press Ctrl 2. And let's also use the bevel modifier. I'll place it above the subdivision and I'll increase the number of segments to 2, or maybe I think I should remove this and go with only the subdivision. But yes, I do need some bevel also, so I'll try to add the bevel directly in the edit mode. Now if you take a close look at this reference image, you will notice that this green area that we have here is not covering the entire area. Like there's some visible gap between this bezel and where this green area starts, so we have some gap in here, and to create a similar thing over here, what I'm going to do is I'll just select this circle, press S to slightly scale this down, let's say like this, then press Shift D to create a duplicate. Let's separate this into a new object and then I'll select it, press A to select all, press E to extrude it, right click to cancel, press S to scale this up, and now I'll be selecting the faces in the middle. Press X to delete the faces, press A to select all, and I now have this ring of faces selected. So I'll go to the front view, press E to extrude it up, and this will act as a nice border for the inner part of the watch. So we'll keep it to this height. Also, I think I can select this edge loop and slightly scale this up by pressing S. And now I'll go back to the object mode. And with this selected, I'll right click to apply shade auto smooth. And let's also apply some subdivision. Let's also add some loop cuts like this. Let's also add one more over here. And after this, the next thing that I'm going to do is to give some materials to the watch. So for this, I'll select the image and hide it from the scene. Then I'll have to create an extra window over here where we can see the render preview. So I'll keep my cursor over here, then left click and drag like this, then change this to the render preview mode, and in the render properties, select cycles as the render engine and change the device to GPU. Let's also disable the scene world for now so that we can see the materials properly. Now I'll select the case of the watch, and for this we'll be creating some material which looks like the one in the reference image. We need to create something that looks like stainless steel. So for that, I have to change this window from timeline to the shader editor. Then I'll create a new material and change its name to steel 1. Then in the default principal BSDF node, I'll first try to change the base color to something else. And for that, I'll be using the noise texture node along with a color ramp node. So to see it practically, press Shift A, then go to texture and add the noise texture node. Then press Shift A, go to color and add the color ramp node. Let's place this over here. Take the factor and connect it to the factor in the color ramp. Then I'll take the color socket in the color ramp and connect it to the base color. Currently it's being applied to the entire object, and I think the position of the dial should be adjusted properly. Or maybe I can just push down the case of the watch slightly lower like this. Then in the color ramp node, I'll just take this pointer, which is the white pointer, and keep its position to somewhere over here. Then I'll change the scaling in the noise texture node. Let's keep it to somewhere around 10 or 11. Let's also connect the socket to the roughness. And yes, for the metallic look, I also need to set the metallic value to 1. Other than this, I also think I need to remove the roughness socket, and I'll reduce the roughness down to, let's say, 0.2. I also think we should reduce the scale value to, let's say, 4. And yes, all these values that I'm adding here are only to test how the material will look under different conditions. There's no need to put these exact values. You can try testing with different values and see what kind of result do you get. And depending on that, you should select the final ones for your material. Currently, I think that this one looks perfectly fine. Also, I think that we should have some plane as the base on which the watch will be kept, and some real lighting in the scene so that we can actually take a look at how the watch will appear in the scene, or basically how its material will react to the light. So for that, I'll select all of the objects by pressing A. Then I'll go to the front view, press G to move them up in the Z axis, and I'll place them over here. Now press Shift A, then go to mesh and select a plane. Let's scale it up 5 to 10 times. And for its material, I'll go to the shader editor, create a new material, and for this one, I'll first of all reduce the brightness of the base color to make it look like the gray color. I'm not changing this to complete black for now. I'll keep this to the gray color like this. Then in the metallic, I'll change this to 1. This will help us to see some reflection of the watch like you can see over here. And if you want to see it even more clearly, you can go to the roughness value and try to reduce it down. At value 0, you will be able to see the complete reflections properly. And if you don't know, the trees that you are seeing here and the grass are basically because of the scene world which you turned off. And due to that, you get a fake lighting in the scene depending on the HDRI that you select over here. By default, you have this one selected, and as a result you get the trees and the nature being visible in the reflections. So we'll fix that later on when we work with the lighting, but for now I think we should keep the roughness value to 0.2 so that we can see the reflections but not very clearly. Other than this, if I now take a look at the stainless steel of the case of watch, I think it's giving us a nice look. Like from the top, it's having a nice shiny appearance like a metal, and from the sides it's having a nice gray color that we need. We might have to adjust the scaling later on in the noise texture node, but for now I think that we can work with this. In a similar way, I'll select this bezel now, and then I'll go to the material and select steel 1. But I don't really want it to be the exact same steel material that we used for the case. I want to add some slight modifications in this. So what I'll do is I'll click on this button to create a duplicate of this. Then whatever changes I make here will only be applied to this bezel object and not the case. So first of all, I adjusted the position of this white pointer because in this I want more white to appear. So I shifted it over here near the black pointer. And other than this, I don't really think we need to change the scale value in the noise texture. Maybe we should change this roughness value to 0.25. Maybe let's reduce it down back to the old value because I don't think we need to make any changes here as well. It's giving us a nice appearance of the stainless steel. After this, I'll select this circular ring that we created, and in this I first think we should add a loop cut here for the bottom part, or maybe we should just push it slightly downwards in the z-axis. Now for the material, I'll create a new material for this, and in this I'll just go to the metallic value and increase this to 1 and bring down the roughness to 0. And currently I won't be making any other changes in this because I think that the kind of material that we apply to this object will actually depend on this green colored material that we'll be creating, because some of its reflections will be visible on this circular ring that we have here. So we'll deal with that later on. For now, I'll select this circular part in the middle, and for this we have to create this green material. And if you take a close look at this, it's not really completely green. Like you can see that it has a radial pattern which is creating these white streaks or whatever you can call them. It basically gives it a nice circular or a radial look, and to create this in Blender, we basically have to use a mix of the noise texture node along with the gradient texture node. The noise texture will allow you to control the roughness so that when the light falls on it, it reflects in a different way in different areas. And the gradient texture node has a radial type that will allow us to create this texture or this pattern. So to see how we make it, I'll go to the shader editor, create a new material, and currently we have the principal BSDF. And in this, I'll go to the base color and change this to the green color, basically something like this. I want it to match the color of this reference image. Then I'll go to the metallic value and change it to 1. And for the roughness, as I explained before, we'll be using the noise texture node, the gradient texture node. So to do all that, I'll press Shift A. Then first of all, I'll be adding the gradient texture. Then after this, I'll be adding the noise texture node. I'll take the color socket and connect it to the vector. And then I'll take the factor and connect it to the roughness. And you'll begin to notice these black things which are because of the gradient texture node. Currently it is set to linear, which is making it appear like this. But if I just change this to radial, and after that I'll reduce the scaling value to, let's say, 2 for now. I also think that we need to add the color ramp node. So press Shift A, then go to color and select the color ramp. Let's place this over here, and I'll place the black pointer over here. Like you can see that this black pointer is basically controlling this darker region of the material, which is controlling the roughness. So if I just shift it close to the white one, you will notice that the roughness of the material will reduce and it begins to reflect a lot of light on it. And the concept behind this is that the black color is represented by the number 0, and white color, which is this white pointer, represents the number 1. So this means that when the black pointer is covering the majority of the area, the roughness will be close to 0, meaning that if I remove this and reduce the roughness to 0, we get a more reflecting surface. But if majority of the area is having a roughness of more than 0.5 or basically close to 1, the roughness will increase, and as a result, the reflections that it creates will reduce. So it's a very simple concept. This color ramp is controlling the area where you have low and high roughness. So if I connect it back, then I need some reflection but not too high. And for the majority of the area, I need a lesser reflecting surface. So I'll go with something very simple like this. And I also think that we need to control the rotation of the gradient texture, because currently I'm not able to see the kind of texture that I wanted to, something like this, like you can see in the reference image. So for this, I'll select the gradient texture, press Ctrl T. This will add the texture coordinate and the mapping node. And what I'm going to do is I'll just try to change the value in the X location and the Y location. Or maybe we should first change the rotation in the Z axis. So I tried different values, and I think somewhere around minus 215 degrees gives us a nice radial look that we need. And other than this, try to change the location in the X axis. Like I think I should keep this to 0.68, or maybe let's try 0.69. This will basically change the location of the point from where the texture spreads. And for the location in y-axis, I think I should go with 0.11. Then you can take a look at it from different angles to see if any changes are required anywhere or not. These values can be different in your case depending on the orientation and the location rotation scaling which is applied. So you can try different values and achieve at the perfect result. But currently I think that this one can work for our case. So we'll go with this. Other than this, I also think that we can now work on the lighting part, so that whatever changes we make here will be visible in a much better way, because if we have realistic lighting, it will be better to see the object's materials. So currently, as I explained to you before, we are not really seeing the real lighting of the scene, but rather a fake HDRI setup that we created with this scene world turned off and this HDRI selected. But in reality, if I turn on the scene world, then this is how our scene is looking. It's completely dark because there are no lights. And even this slight lighting that you can see is basically the result of this background strength parameter in the world properties. We have this gray color by default. And let's say I reduce this strength down to 0, then we do not have any light at all in the scene. It's completely dark. We are not able to see any reflections, any mesh, nothing is visible in the scene. And so we can now work with the actual lighting. And yes, I'll be making the changes in the mesh, like adding the lights or the planes in this part of the workspace. And you'll be able to see the results on this part. So to start with the lighting, I want you to remember that in the previous chapter, which was the first chapter, we created a very basic setup where we created this very simple 3-point lighting system. And the majority of the light was coming from behind, basically due to an emission plane. And it was a pretty good lighting system for objects where you need a lot of light in the scene, like cosmetic products, or let's say you're creating a visualization for a keyboard or anything like that which requires a nice lighting setup, basically a bright lighting setup. But in this case, we are working on animating this watch, and for that, we don't really want a very bright lighting setup. We need something more cinematic, more dark, because it is a luxury product. And you must have seen in advertisements that in case of luxury products, the animation usually starts from a dark scene and then it shows some part of the light, which then shows the reflection with the materials of the object because it gives it a very nice contrasting and a cinematic look. So we need to create a similar thing or an effect over here. And yes, this is the part where you have to make the efforts, like to make better animations in terms of cinematic quality and to understand where what kind of animations or lighting should you have. You should try to observe as much animations as possible, as much animated advertisements as possible, because only then you'll be able to correlate different animations that you watch and understand that okay, this thing is happening because this lighting setup was used, or let's say this particular transition was added because it changes the cinematic feel of the shot. So these things will come to you when you actually observe the advertisements and animations a lot. But even if you are at a very beginner stage right now, I don't really think it would be a problem for you to understand that for luxury items, it is usually suggested to go with a dark cinematic lighting setup. So coming back to the scene, we have to add some lighting here, and this time we are going to use a different method of lighting than before. In this one, we'll be basically adding a plane above the object, which is the main focus of the animation. Basically, we'll add two particular planes. One will be the emission plane, which will be on the top, and then below it, we'll add a textured plane, which will allow some light to pass through it, and it will kind of block some part of lights, and it will create a nice cinematic look that we want to achieve. So, to practically see this happening, I'll press Shift A, go to Mesh, and add a plane. Let's say I scale this up 5 times, or maybe I should just double this. Then I'll move it up in the Z axis. And let's say I place this over here. Now to create that emission effect that I was talking about, I can go to the material properties or basically the shader editor window, create a new material. Here I'll go with the white base color and the default settings in metallic roughness. I'll increase the emission strength to let's say 0.4. Now we get some slight lighting in the scene, and it is more towards the dark side right now because the emission strength is very low. If you want, you can increase this, but I don't really want that. I want to keep it to something low like 0.4 or 0.5. And now what I will do is I'll duplicate this plane by pressing Shift D. Let's move it down in the Z axis, let's say over here. And now I want this plane to act as a translucent and a textured plane that will block some part of light and allow some part of light to emit. So to create such a thing here, I'll first remove this existing material. And currently, if you notice, we again lost all the lighting from the scene. And the reason for that is very simple. This plane was acting as the emission plane, but since we added a plane below it, so it is now blocking all the light. And let's say I press GY to move this, then this is how you're able to see the light again. But I'll right click to place it back at the original position, and I won't be moving this anywhere. But without doing that, I want the texture to do the same thing for me. So in the shader editor, let's create a new material. And I don't really want the principal BSDF node. Instead, I'll be adding the translucent BSDF node. So let's add it and place it over here. This will allow some part of the light to pass through it. But if I want some randomness in that translucent behavior, then I need to use the noise texture node. So press Shift A, go to texture and select the noise texture. Let's place this over here. I'll take the factor socket and connect it to the color. And to check how the texture is being applied, what I'll do is I'll select this emission plane and hide this for now. Then I'll disable the scene world for now so that I can see the artificial light. And this is how the noise texture is being applied to the plane. You can see these dark areas, which basically imply the region from where the light will be blocked. And these lighter regions are the ones which will allow the light to pass through them. But I want to increase the scaling. So let's say I change this to 7, and in the remaining parameters, I'll go with the default ones. Then I'll unhide the plane which was creating the emission effect, and I'll also enable the scene world here. Let's see how the watch looks. So I'll zoom in like this, and this is how it looks. Currently the scene is very dark as we already expected it to be. And if you want the details of the watch to be more properly visible, we can add a plane over here that will act as the emission plane just like the previous chapter. But the new thing that we did in this one was that instead of using the 3-point lighting system, we used this system of two planes where one was the emission plane and the other one was this translucent textured plane which created this nice soft lighting that we needed. And now to act as the fill light, I'll be creating one more plane object. Let's rotate this in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Let's push it backwards in the y-axis, scale it up, let's say 20 times. And then I'll create a new material for this. I'll change its color to the black color. Then in the emission, I'll increase the strength to let's say 1, or maybe let's keep this to 1.2. And I also think that I should move it in the y-axis over here. Let's also scale this down like this. And this is how the watch looks. Other than this, I also think I should push this slightly downwards. And I think that currently we can work with this lighting setup. We'll obviously be refining it more and we'll make it better once all the parts of the watch are completed. But just to get an idea of how the watch will actually look in the final render, I think that this lighting setup is giving us a nice idea. So for now, I'll just hide the three lights in the scene and we'll disable the scene world again because now we'll be modeling the remaining parts of the watch. And the thing that we're going to do now is to make the glass of the watch, which will be on the top. So for this, the process is very simple. I'll be selecting this bezel of the watch, then go to the edit mode. Let's say I select this vertex loop over here, press Shift D to create a duplicate, then press P to open the separate menu and select separate by selection. This will create a new object with the name circle.004. Press A to select all and I'll be using the grid fill tool by pressing Ctrl F and selecting grid fill. Now I'll return back to the object mode and I think that the position and the scaling of the glass is proper. So to give this the glass material, I'll go to the material properties and remove this steel material from it. Then I'll create a new material and change its name to glass. Now in the transmission, I'll increase the weight to 1 so that the material allows the light to pass through it. And if I reduce the roughness down to 0, or maybe we should add some noise to the roughness so that it looks like the real glass. So for this, I'll press Shift A to add the noise texture. Let's place this over here. Then press Shift A to add the color ramp node so that we can control how the noise is being added to the texture. Now I'll take the factor and connect it here and take the color and connect it to the roughness. Now let's adjust the position of these pointers. And yes, you can see the changes in a much better way by connecting the color socket in the color ramp node directly to the surface socket in the material output. Again, these black areas are the ones which are representing the zero value, which will go into the roughness, meaning that over here the surface will be completely smooth and reflecting. And these white areas or the gray ones are representing the value which is closer to 1, meaning that these areas will be more rough and less reflecting. So you can adjust the position of the pointers in the color ramp, and other than this you can go to the scale value in the noise texture and try to adjust it. I'll also increase the detailing to the maximum 15. Then in the roughness I'll reduce this to 0. Then I'll take the BSDF socket and connect it back here, and I think that it will give us a nice glass material to work with. But I think that because of using the noise texture, we are getting very large patches in terms of the roughness, which are not really looking very nice. Like if I turn off the scene world and unhide the planes, then it's giving us a very bad look, I think. So to fix this, I'll first change the scale back to 5. And I think we should use the texture coordinate and the vector mapping node. So I'll press Ctrl T with the noise texture node selected. Then I'll take the object and connect it to vector. And now we'll be using these scale values so that I can control the scaling of this texture like this. In the y-axis, I'll try to increase this to let's say 10. And then in the scale value of the noise texture, I'll bring this down because I don't want so many roughness patches here. I just want a very slight variation in the roughness. So I think I can go with the value of 1, or maybe I can keep this to 0.8 just to get a very slight noise texture pattern in the roughness. I will try to check it from different angles that how it looks. Let's also try to change the value of scale Y. Let's keep this to 11.5, and I think that this can work for our case. So let's go with this. Apart from this, the next thing that we are going to do is to add some more details to the watch. I've hidden the glass for now because we need to add the details here. We'll unhide it later on once we are done with that. So first of all, if I take a look at this watch, a very important thing that I can notice here is these numbers, these rectangular shapes, the logo, the hands of the clock, this date over here, and the cutout that we have to create for it. And at the bottom, we also have this written Swiss made. So we have to make all this. So to begin with that, the very first thing that we'll begin with are these lines that you can see in between these numbers. So modeling these is a very easy thing, to be honest. Like we just need to add a plain object, then we'll scale it down, and then we can use the array modifier to add these in the circular path. So to do this, I'll first go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, press Shift A, go to mesh and add a plane. Let's scale this down by pressing S and turn on the X-ray mode by pressing Alt Z. Let's scale this down in the x-axis and let's scale this down further like this. I also think that we need to unhide the reference image so that we can make its size very accurate. I'll press G and Z, then I'll move it up in the y-axis and place this over here. Let's scale this down further and let's also scale this in the x-axis slightly. Let's place this over here. Now I'll go back to the object mode and I'll go to the object menu, set origin to geometry, or maybe I should set the origin to 3D cursor for now, so that if I try to rotate it like this, it will be easy for us to use the array modifier. Now to create the duplicates by using the array modifier, I'll go to the modify properties, click on add modifier. Now you can see that there are two types of array modifiers. The second one is the array legacy, and this one was the older version of the array modifier, which was slightly different, and it is the outdated version, so we'll not use this. We have some new features like in the form of a line, circle, curve. We also have the randomize option here. So it's very easy to work with this array modifier. And in this particular case, we'll be going for a circle. Then in the count, we have 3, and here you can see that we have these 3 duplicates created. But instead, I want this to be increased to, let's say, 60, because we have 60 seconds in total. And I think that it's perfectly matching the reference image also, like you can see over here. So we can go with this. Now the issue is that we don't want these planes to appear on top of these numbers like 60, 55. So this means that we have to delete these parts or the sections. But currently, if I go to the edit mode, you will notice that we only have this single object of the array and not all of them, because we have not yet applied this modifier. We have only added it yet and not applied. So I'll press Ctrl A or click here to apply the modifier. And now if I go to the edit mode, you can see that I can individually select any of these. But before I do that, I also think that I should push it above in the Z axis so that it appears above this green circular disk. So press G and Z and move it above over here. I'll keep its position just above the disk like this. Then I'll go to the top view, press Alt Z, and I also think I'll be selecting this, and let's press 3 for the face selection mode. Select this face loop and increase the selection by using Control and plus on the numpad. And what I'll do is I'll scale this down to bring this closer like this so that it properly surrounds this loop of sticks like you can see in the reference image. It's almost adjacent to this circular loop, so we'll keep it like this. And I also think that I should maybe remove the subdivision modifier and take a look at it from a different angle. Maybe let's also try to turn on the scene world and unhide the 3 planes that we use for lighting. And this is how it looks. You can notice these reflections that are being visible in this circular ring, which is happening because we have set the metallic value to 1 and roughness to 0. If you want these to be slightly blurred, you can slightly increase the roughness value to, let's say, 0.2, and these will appear slightly blurred as compared to before. You can even try to change the metallic value, but I think that this one looks perfect, so we'll go with this. Other than this, you can even make the base color slightly grayish if you want, and this is how it looks. You can see that it is not exactly the same as the reference image, because just like I said in the beginning, we are only using this image as a reference in order to get the shape, the size and proportions correct, and not really copying everything from it. So coming back to the scene, I'll again hide the plane objects from the scene which were used for the lighting, and I'll then disable the scene world. And now coming back to this loop of planes, I'll go back to the top view, and we have to now delete the ones that are placed on these numbers. We'll replace them with the numbers later on. but first of all we have to select all of them. So with the shift key holded, let's select each of these. Now over here we have the Swiss made written and the logo. So we need to remove the three of these so that we can write it later on with the logo. Then I'll select this one and continue doing the same. Now with all these selected, press X and select delete faces. Now return back to the object mode and let's fill these empty spaces. So for this, I first need to make sure that whatever object I add in the scene, like to create the numbers, we'll add the text object. Then to make the logo also, we'll use the plain object or something else. So for all of them, the center point should be this yellow colored point, which is basically the origin point of the selected object. And we'll make sure that all of them are in the same dimension in respect of the x and y axis, and it is actually a very important thing to do so that it's not like one of the object is above in the z axis, one of them is downwards. So to make sure this happens correctly, I have to place my 3D cursor over this point. So with this selected, keep holding shift S and then take the cursor to this option which is cursor to selected, and this will place the 3D cursor over here. Now if I press shift A, then for the numbers we'll add the text object. Then this is how the text will get added here. It will have the origin point over here, meaning that if I press S to scale this down, then it will get scaled up or scaled down depending on this point. Basically, this will be the pivot point or the origin point of the object. Now let's go to the top view, press enter to change the text, use the backspace key to remove this, then type 60 and press the tab key again to return back to the object mode. Now for those of you who don't know how the text feature works in Blender, it's not really the same as any mesh object. It's like if you are in the object mode, you can change the scaling, you can change the rotation, you can move it around anywhere. But if you're in the edit mode, you can only type anything and that will get displayed here. You cannot scale it up and down. Like if you try to press S to scale it, nothing will happen. It will just simply place S over here that we certainly do not want if we want to scale it. So I'll backspace this. So just keep this thing in mind that mesh and text objects work differently in Blender. And now I think I should scale it down further. And currently if I try to move it in the y-axis over here and try to place it, let's say over here, then you can see that the font of the watch is not really the same or not even close to the one that we have over here. So we'll try to make it as close as possible. And for that, we can go to the object data properties here. And here you will find the font option. And yes, a very important thing to note here is that if you're working for a brand, and especially if it's a very big name like Rolex or Titan or anything else, not just any watch company, but any other company which follows a particular color palette or some fonts. So they will provide you those exact details because they would want you to use those exact things only. But in this particular case, all we have is this reference image that we are using. So we'll try to get as close as possible with the fonts that we have. So I'll click on this folder icon in the regular font option. It will open this window where we have all these fonts saved. I tried to use different fonts to see that which one matches this. And the one that I found the closest was this Aldrich regular. So I'll be selecting this. You can search for it by using the search bar over here. Then after selecting, click open font. And this is how it looks. I'll scale it up further. Press G to move this over here. Then after this, I'll press Shift D to create its duplicate. Press G to move this over here. Let's enter the tab key and change this to 5. Let's return back to the object mode. And I also think I should go to the top view here so that we can see the render version. Now I'll rotate this by pressing R. I'll go to the rotate option and change this to exact 30. Press G to move this and place it over here. Again, I'll press Shift D to create a duplicate of this. Press G to move this over here where we have the number 10. Then press Tab to enter the edit mode. Change this to 10. Return back to the object mode. Press R to rotate it by exact 30 degrees and set the position correctly. Now you have to do the same thing for all the other numbers. Now here we have to add Swiss made and the logo. So we leave this for now. And since we are leaving this part, so when you create the duplicate for 35, do ensure that the rotation is 60 and not 30. So let's continue with adding the numbers. Now after this, I'll be adding a new text object to write this Swiss made text. So for this, press Shift A, then go to text. Let's remove this by pressing backspace and type Swiss, then return back to the object mode. Press S to scale this down, and we'll place this over here by pressing G and placing this over here. Then we'll adjust the size and the rotation depending on the reference image that we have in the background. Then I'll press Shift T to duplicate, press G to move this over here. Let's change this text by going to the edit mode and typing made instead of Swiss. Then press R to rotate it and adjust its position and the scaling. Also, I think that we should change the font of this text to the ones that we used for these numbers so that it will somewhat match with the reference image. And yes, another thing that you can notice here is that the text appears as if it's following the path of a curve. So if you want to be very accurate, then in that case, after you change the font, you can convert this text into mesh by simply right clicking and convert to, and you can select the mesh from here, and then you can track or set the path of this mesh to a circle or a curve. But to keep the thing simple for now, I'll be going with this only without any curve tracking method. To change the font, I'll go to the object data properties here, and with the first text selected, I'll be using that same Aldrich font that we used for the numbers. So I'll click here in the regular and select this font. Then I'll scale this up by pressing S and place this over here. Let's slightly rotate this, and let's do the same thing for this one also. Now after this, we have to model the logo, and we also have a bigger logo on the top here below the number 60, and I think we should be modeling this first and then we'll duplicate it for the lower part. So to model the logo, I'll first be adding a plane object in the scene. So press Shift A, go to mesh and add a plane, then go to the edit mode and scale this down. Then I'll move it above in the Y axis and place this where we have the logo. Then switch to the edit mode, press 1 for the vertex selection mode, and I'll be selecting 3 vertices here. Press X to delete the vertices, and I'll leave this one as it is. And we'll use this to basically block out the logo. So I'll press G to move this and place this over here where we have this Y axis and the top part of the logo. And then I'll press E to extrude it like this. Basically, I have to form the shape, or in even simpler words, I have to trace the logo by duplicating the vertex like this. And once you have extruded this half of the logo, simply press Shift D, move this up in the Y axis and place this over here to form this inner part of the logo where basically it is hollow. Then press E to extrude it like this and repeat the same procedure. Now after this, I'll go to the modify properties and let's add the mirror modifier. So I'll select it from the list, then go to the edit mode, press A to select all and slightly push it in the X axis. But yes, before that, I think we should enable clipping and then press GX to move it like this so that there won't be any empty spaces. Or I think what I should do is I should select the vertices on this Y axis line and move these in the X axis by pressing G and X so that they clip properly. Now I'll press A to select all, then I'll hold the control key to deselect these vertices over here, press F to fill the face, but this will fill it completely like you can see here in the render preview. And obviously we want to have a circular cutout region here. So for this, I'll select this loop of vertices, press P and separate by selection. We'll basically convert it into a separate object and then give it some thickness. Then we'll use the Boolean modifier to create the difference. So to do this practically, I have this object selected. I'll go to the edit mode, press A to select all, press F to fill the face. Then after this, I'll be applying this mirror modifier that I have here. Then I'll change the angle. Let's also go to the front view. Let's go to the edit mode, press A to select all, and let's extrude this in the Z axis so that it has some visible thickness, and I'll slightly push it down in the Z axis over here. Then I'll select this. Let's go to the edit mode, press A to select all and extrude this up in the Z axis slightly like this. And after this, while being in the edit mode of the logo that I have, I'll select all the vertices by pressing A, then I'll right click to subdivide, and then before I use the Boolean modifier to create the difference, I'll be selecting these vertices that I have added. Like we can make it very smooth like this. We'll need to adjust all the vertices properly. So we'll do this, and then after that, we'll use the Boolean modifier. So let's do this one by one. Our main target is to make this as smooth as possible in terms of the geometry. Like you can see the result over here. Like if I turn on the render preview mode, this one looks somewhat circular, and we want to do the same thing for the other ones also. So we are doing this step here. And after this, I think it looks more or less ready in terms of the geometry. The only thing that I need to fix here is this bottom part. We can make this more smooth as compared to the current version. So I'll fix the position of some of these vertices to make this look better. And then I'll go to the modify properties, click on add modifier, then in generate, select Boolean, and I can select this object which I want to cut out, and its name is plain.006. So in the Boolean modifier, I'll type the object's name, which is plain.006, and select it. Then I'll hide this plain.006 from the scene. And here we can see that we have a cutout. But to make this smooth, what I'll do is I'll unhide the plane or that object basically. Then go to the edit mode, or maybe I will press Ctrl 1 to apply subdivision modifier. Then right click to apply shade smooth. Let's change the angle to see how it looks. And I think that we should increase the levels viewport to a value of 2 so that it looks more circular and smooth like we want. Then I'll hide it again from the scene, and this is how the logo looks. If you want, you can make it exactly like this one, like you would have to make some changes in this geometry, but I feel like we can go with this one, so I'll keep it as it is. Other than this, I'll create its duplicate to place over here. Like you can see the reference image. We have a small logo over here also. But before I duplicate that, you can also notice that this mesh around the empty part that we created does not really look very smooth and nice. And this is happening because if I unhide the plain.006 object, you can see that because of adding subdivision, its geometry is not really very nice. We can easily notice these shading issues in it, and to solve these, we'll be using the bevel modifier. So in the modifier, I'll go to add modifier, and in the generate, select bevel. Then I'll place it above subdivision, and in the number of segments, I'll increase this to 2. Now let's hide this again, and I think that it looks better than before, and so we can go with this one. Now I'll go to the top view, press Shift D to create a duplicate, and I'll move this down in the y-axis over here. Let's scale this down by pressing S and move this over here. Let's also enable the X-ray mode so that we can do this more precisely. Let's say I keep this over here, and this is how it looks in the render preview mode. We have all the numbers, the logo, and even this text Swiss made with the logo here. So we are done with most of the design, and now all what's left is these rectangles which are pointing at the numbers like 5, 10, 20, and other than this we have the hands of the clock and this little circular thing above them. So first of all, let's begin with these rectangular objects, and for this I'll be adding a plane object in the scene. So press Shift A, go to mesh and add a plane. Let's scale this down by pressing S, then go to the edit mode. I'll scale this in the x-axis like this, and let's also enable the X-ray mode so that I can make the changes properly depending on the reference image. Then I'll place this over here. Let's zoom in properly. Press R to rotate it and adjust it so that it properly matches the reference image. Now I'll return back to the object mode, and you can see that its origin point is not in the center, but we'll fix it later on because first I also need to extrude it above. Like you can see that it has some visible thickness. It's not a 2D plane. It has some thickness, meaning that we have to turn it into a 3D object. Basically, we have to give it some height. So I'll go to the edit mode, press A to select all, and press E to extrude it up slightly like this. And you can also see that if I slightly zoom out for some better resolution, it's not completely white or completely metallic. Its border is metallic, just like the stainless steel material that we have. And then we have this inset face effect, which is giving this a white color look. And this is the same thing with all the other ones also. So in this case also, we'll press I to inset this face on the top so that when we apply some materials to this, we can apply different materials to different parts of the mesh. So after this, I'll go to the top view, and now I have to create the duplicates for all the remaining sections. And just like we did with the numbers, we'll be keeping a difference of 30 degrees for each while rotating them, because we have a total of 12 numbers. So a total of 360 degrees divided by 12 gives us 30 degrees for each. And yes, we don't have anything over here, so the jump from 10 to 20 will directly be of 60 degrees instead of 30. But yes, before that I'll go to object, then set origin to geometry, and now let's begin with the duplication process. Now we are done with all of these. We have all the numbers, these rectangular objects pointing at the numbers, and even the logo. And after this, the next thing that we have to do is to create a cutout for the date. And for this, I'll be using a cube object. We'll use the same method of using the Boolean modifier to create the cutout. So press Shift A. Let's also disable the X-ray mode. Now press Shift A, go to Mesh and add a cube. Let's scale this down by pressing S. Let's go to the top view and I'll place this over here. Then I'll go to the edit mode. Let's scale this down and I'll adjust its vertices so that it matches the region which we have to cut out. So let's move these in the x-axis, then select these and move these above in the y-axis like this. And after this, I'll ensure that it has some thickness. Then I'll select the circular disc, go to the modify properties, click on add modifier, and in generate, I'll go to Boolean. Then I have to select this object, which is the cube, and then I'll check its name, which is cube. Then in the Boolean modifier, I'll be typing cube and press enter. Then if I hide the cube from the scene, then here we have the region cut out. And yes, to ensure that whatever thing you hide in the scene, by either pressing H to hide or using this I button, you also hide it in the final render by clicking this camera icon. Similarly, I have this circle.004, which I guess is the glass. I have hidden it only temporarily, so I won't be hiding it in the viewport version. But other than this, I have this plane, basically these three planes for the lighting, and I don't think that there's anything else that I need to unhide or change its visibility in the final render. After this, I'll be adding a new text object for the date. So press Shift A and add the text. Let's go to the top view, then go to the edit mode. Let's remove all this and type 28. Let's scale this down like this and I'll place this over here. Then for the font, I'll go to the object data properties and I'll change this first to the Aldrich regular to see how it looks. And I don't think it's working for this. We need it to be something simpler. So I'll click here to open the fonts and I'll search for this particular font and add it. Then I'll scale this up. Now again, it's not matching the one in the reference image, but I think it's totally fine because we are only using the image as a reference and not as an exact copy of what we are making. So we can go with this. The only thing is that I think there should be some more space between 2 and 8. And for this, I'll scroll down in the object data properties and here we have the character spacing. So I'll try to increase it slightly. I think we should keep this to 1.2 or maybe let's try 1.25 and now it looks better. Apart from this, I'll change its material. So I'll go to the material properties, create a new material and change its color to the black color. If you want, you can even scale this down in the y-axis. If you want to scale it down like this, so you can do that. And I also think I should reduce the roughness down to 0. It won't really create a lot of difference. Or maybe I should increase this because the black color is being visible in a much better way. So I'll go with the roughness value set to 1. And I can even set the metallic value to 1, which will go well with the contrast. Like most of the parts are white colored. Even the stainless steel is giving us a very bright look. So we should try to give it as dark as possible. So let's go with this. And then for these rectangles, I'll be using the same base material that we used for this bezel of the watch. So we have this material steel 1.001 and so I'll apply it to these objects. So I've selected this one. Let's go to the material properties, click here and type steel 1.001. Let's apply it and we can't really see much difference right now. I'll check the reason later on when I disable the scene world and work with actual lighting. Or else I can also go to the color ramp and check if the material is reacting or not. And yes, the material is properly reacting. So maybe it must be because of the lighting. Now to apply the same material for the other ones, I'll be selecting each of these one by one with the shift key holded. Then select this one at last. And I think I should also select this logo over here. Then select this one at last again. Press Ctrl L and select link materials. This will apply the same materials to all the objects. And after this, I'll click here and enable the scene world. Then I'll go to the outliner and enable the three plane objects in the scene. Let's change the angle to see how it looks. And I think that the watch is having a nice look. Obviously, we need to change a lot of things like First of all, I think we should be selecting all these plane objects and pushing them down because currently their height is a bit too much. So I'll select all of these, then press G and Z and push them slightly down so that they're just above the circular disc and a little bit of their thickness is being visible, but it should not be too much. Also, in the scene collection, I'll unhide the glass. We can take a look at how the watch will actually look with the glass. We might have to change the roughness settings in the glass so that we can see it more clearly. But other than that, almost everything else looks completely perfect. The only thing is that I'll be selecting this white color thing behind the date. Let's slightly move it up to see what it is. Okay, so it is the case and that is why it is appearing as the steel material. So what I'll do is I'll go to the edit mode and I'll be selecting all these faces over here. So let's select all of these on the top. With the shift key hold it, I'll select the other ones also. I think I should select only these faces on the top so that the rest of it has the steel material. So I'll select these. And yes, this is having the mirror modifier, which you can check in the modify properties over here. So whatever changes I do here will also get applied on this side and this side. So I'll select all of these and then I'll be adding a new material which will be completely white in color so that the black color of the date looks better with the white and black contrast. So I've selected all the faces. Then I'll go to the material properties, create a new material slot. Let's create a new material. And in this, before I begin to change anything, I'll click on the assign button and I think that it's already looking better. But what I can do is I can set the roughness value to 1 and even the metallic value to 1, or maybe I should reduce the metallic to 0 like this, and now it looks better. I can even go to the base color to increase this to the maximum brightness like this. Now after all this, I'll be selecting this inner circular loop which is being surrounded by this outer bezel, and with this selected, I'll go to the edit mode, press Ctrl R to add a loop cut here, and I want to add a new material to these selected faces, basically the same one that we used for the white background behind the date. I just want to test how the contrast will look when it is added with this default steel material that you can see here. So to test it, I've selected these faces, then I'll go to the material properties. Let's create a new slot and select that white color material that we just created. Then click on the assign button and this is how it looks. And I think it's giving us a nice look. It's creating a nice circular ring. If you want, you can go with the older one also. But if I take a look at the reference image, then you can see that we have the stainless steel bezel and on the inside we have a slight reflecting layer, but between that we can see some white color also. So it's giving us that similar look. It's not completely the same, but it's giving us similar vibes. So we'll go with this. Other than this, I also think we should be selecting all these rectangular objects. And if you remember, we created this inset face because in the reference image also we have stainless steel on the sides and on the inside face we have this white color material. So here also I'll be creating a new material slot and use that same material.007, which is the white color material, and I'll click assign, and this is how it looks. You might not be able to notice much difference if you look at it from a distance, but if you zoom in, you can see that on the outer side we have stainless steel and on the inner side we have the white color material. Also, I think that we can apply some bevel modifier to these because currently they are looking very flat and too much fake. So I'll go to the modify properties and let's add the bevel modifier. Let's set the number of segments to, let's say, 3. Then I'll right click to apply shade auto smooth, and maybe I should reduce the amount value to something like 0.01, or maybe let's go even lower like 0.005 with the segments set to 3. And to make this look even better, I'll go to the edit mode and with this face selected on the top, I'll slightly extrude this down like this, and this is giving it a very nice look, I think, if you compare it to the other ones. And I think that instead of doing the same thing with all of these, I'll rather select all of these and delete, and then I'll create the duplicate of this one again. And yes, I know that this step might be a little heartbreaking for some of you because it must have taken some time to create the duplicates and rotate them and place them properly in your scene. So you can skip this part if you want, or maybe you can select each one individually and make this extrusion adjustment. And yes, then in the end, you can just select all of these and select this one at the end. Then in the Control L menu, which is for linking, you can copy the modifiers and it will make your work easier. But in this particular case, I'll be deleting all of these and I'll create the duplicates one more time. And with this, we are done with the part of duplicating all these and adding the details. After this, the next thing is to apply the same white material to the logo and these numbers and these lines that we have in between them so that they bring in a nice contrast and they don't look very dull. So for this, I'll go to material properties with the logo selected, and I can see that I have applied the steel material. So I think that we can go with this one also. It's already giving us a bright look for the logo, so we won't change this for now. And for the numbers, I think that for now we'll go with default one, but once we finalize the lighting and work on the animation, then if needed we'll change this material. Otherwise we can go with this default one only. Now after this, the next thing is to model the hands of the clock. So first of all, I'll be adding a cylindrical object in the scene that basically holds all the three hands of the clock: the hour hand, the minute, and the second. So press Shift A, go to Mesh and add a cylindrical object. Let's scale this down by pressing S like this and zoom in. Let's also go to the top view so that we can see the reference image. Let's slightly scale this up like this. And after this, I'll go to the front view to check its height, and I think I should scale this up slightly. I'll keep the scaling to something like this in the Z axis. Let's also push this above like this. Then I'll select the top part, press Ctrl B to apply some bevel. Here I'll set the number of segments to 4 and go with this width value. Maybe let's slightly try to reduce it like this. And I'll go with a very simple structure here. Then for the material, I'll be applying the steel material that we created initially. Or maybe let's change this to this steel 1.001 because it is more bright as compared to the one that we created before. So we'll go with this right now. Then let's model the hands of the clock. And for that, I'll be adding a plane object in the scene. So press Shift A, go to Mesh and add a plane. Press Tab to enter the edit mode. Let's scale this down. And let's also go to the top view. Press R to rotate it like this. Then press 1 for the vertex selection mode. Select this vertex over here. Press G to move it and align it properly with the reference image. Let's do the same thing with this one also. Let's align it over here and do the same thing for the other two. This will give us a basic structure of the hands of the clock. Now I'll push it slightly above in the Z-axis like this. Then go to the edit mode, press Ctrl R to add a loop cut over here. And you can see that it's having this line in the middle which is pushed a little bit upwards. So to create a similar thing over here, I'll press G and Z and push these two vertices slightly above like this. And you can even see that we have a face inset effect over here also, just like the rectangular plane objects. So for this one also, what I'll do is I'll be selecting both of these, press I to inset, then I'll select the three vertices over here, press G twice and slide it down over here. Then I'll select these three, press G twice and slide it down here. Let's adjust the positions properly and scale these down a little bit. Now to give this some material, I'll go to the material properties and first I'll try this steel material, and I think that it looks very nice for the hands of the clock. It's giving it a dark material look. If needed, we'll adjust it later on, but for now I think we can go with this. Then I'll be selecting the two faces which we created using the inset faces effect, and for these I'll be adding a new material slot, and in this I'll select that white color material and assign it. Also, I think that just like before, I can slightly extrude this down like this, then press Ctrl and plus on the numpad to increase selection and click assign. Now in a similar way, I have to create the minute hand also. So with this selected, I'll press Shift T to create a duplicate, press R to rotate it like this so that it matches the reference image. Let's go to the edit mode and I'll be selecting the three vertices over here. Press G to move them over here like this. And then for this white colored region, I'll be selecting this one first and I'll place this over here, let's say, or maybe I should slightly rotate this so that it matches the reference image in a much better way. Then I'll select these vertices and push them slightly above in the y-axis like this. Let's do the same with these also. And this is how it looks. I think I should slightly move these above in the z-axis like this. And I think that in this steel 1 material, I can go to the color ramp node and slightly adjust its position, basically its white pointer, so that it doesn't really look very dark because it's giving it unrealistic look. So I'll adjust its position. And now this is how the watch model is looking. We have the case ready. We have the bezel ready, even this green disc-like structure, the hands of the clock, except the seconds hand. We'll model it in the next few seconds. We also have the numbers, the text, the logo, and even this glass of the watch ready. Of course, we have to make it perfect, but we'll do that later on. But more or less, I think we can begin with the straps of the watch. So for that, I'll first select the case of the watch. Then after this, what I'll do is I'll change the angle so that I can see this part. Then press 3 for the face select mode. Select these faces over here. Press E to extrude them to close this region like this. Or maybe what I should do is to undo this and instead press I to insert this part. Then turn off the boundary settings here. Press E to extrude this like this, and if it does not get closed like this, you can press E again. Then this will basically close the open region around the case of the watch that we need. And then here we can begin with modeling the strap of the watch. And if you take a look at this strap, it is basically the metal strap. And in watches you mainly have two kinds of straps, as you must be knowing. One of them is made up of leather and the other one is made up of metal, just like this one. In case of the metallic straps, the structure looks somewhat difficult to be modeled, but it can be easily made by using the array modifier. You just have to place some cylindrical objects or some planes, and then for the circular loop, you can use the array modifier, so it's not very complicated. And in case of leather strap, it's a very simple thing to model. Like you just have to add a plain object and make it shape like the strap, and then you just have to apply the leather material to it or the texture if you have it. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is to add some cylinders and then we'll use them to create the strap. So first press Shift A, go to mesh and add the cylinder. Let's go to the edit mode, press R, X and type 90. Let's also rotate it in the Z axis by 90, and I'll then scale this down by pressing S. Let's also scale this down in the Z axis like this and scale it down further. Let's go to the top view and I have to adjust its position to over here where we want to have the strap of the watch. I'll go to the edit mode and scale this up. Let's scale this up in the Y axis also like this and adjust its position. Let's scale this down in the X axis like this. And yes, I should push it backwards in the Y axis like this. Then right click to apply shade smooth. Then press Shift key to create a duplicate. Place this over here. Let's scale this up in the x-axis to make this wider, and then I'll also push it slightly down in the x-axis so that it does not intersect with the bezel of the watch. Now again I'll select this, press Shift T to create a duplicate and move this over here in the x-axis like this. And right now the structure looks very simple, but once we use the array modifier, I think you'll be able to understand what was the purpose of adding these cylinders. So with the three of them selected, I'll press Ctrl J to join them together into a single object. And for now, I'll go over here and type steel 1 to apply the steel material to these. Then after this, I'll go to modifiers, click on add modifier and select the array modifier. Then in the offset X, I'll change this to 0 because I don't want them to create the array or the sequence in X axis, but rather in the Y axis. As you can see here, we have the Y axis over here. So in the offset Y, I'll change this to 1, or maybe let's try a negative value, and I need to adjust it properly so that it actually appears like the strap of watch. Here I'll keep the count to 8, let's say, and I'll change the offset in y-axis to minus 0.75, or maybe let's keep this minus 0.8 only. Then in the scale value, I don't want these to be consistent throughout. Like I'll keep this scale in y-axis to 0.99, and even the x-axis, let's keep this to 0.98 so that the scaling is not the same. Like I want it to be maximum over here, then the scaling should reduce as it reaches the end. Now to get a similar thing on the other side, I'll be using the mirror modifier. So in the modifier, let's go to add modifier, then in the generate, select the mirror modifier. Let's scroll down and instead of the x-axis, I'll go with the y-axis, and in the mirror object, I'll be selecting this case. Then I'll slightly bring them down in the z-axis like this. And now comes the most important part, which is to bend the strap so that it goes like a curve. Currently it is looking completely flat, but we need to change it into a curve-like shape. And we can achieve that result by using the simple deform modifier. It has a function known as bend, and in that if I try to change the bend angle, I'll be able to achieve the required result. So in the modifier settings, I'll add the modifier. First, I'll go to the deform section, and in this, I'll select simple deform. Now the result appears very weird. I'll first drag the simple deform modifier above the mirror modifier over here, like this. And by default, we have the twist selected. That is why it's appearing like this. But if I change this to bend, and in the axis, I'll select the x-axis only for now. I think we should add a circular object and then we can use it as the origin point here, because otherwise we won't be able to tell the simple deform modifier that we want to convert it into a circular loop like structure. So press Shift A, go to mesh and select a circle. Let's rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Then I'll select the strap again, and in the simple deform I'll type circle and select the last one, because this is the circle.005 which I just added. And you can see that we can begin to see some changes in the strap, just like the ones that we wanted, but it is in the opposite direction right now. So if I change the angle to something negative, then we can achieve the required result. So I think I can keep this value to something like minus 140. Then I'll go to the circle and try to scale this down in the z-axis, because I don't want it to be completely circular, but something like this. But I think I should move them above in the z-axis again. And now this looks better. Other than this, I think I should move this slightly in the y-axis. Like, what you should do is you should try to see the final result as you make the changes in the solid mode, because that's how you will be able to make the final adjustments in the model. Like, there will be very small things that you would have to tweak, like rotation values, the positions, and these will be different in my case and yours, so you would have to do this thing yourself. Like here, I think I should push this slightly backwards like this, and this is how the strap of the watch is looking. We might have to change its scaling, rotation, or other things later on, but for now I think we can go with this. Like, it's actually giving it a very nice realistic look. If you compare it to the reference image, we have a different material over here, but again we can adjust that thing when we work with the lighting and animation part. So you don't need to worry about that right now. The only thing that you have to compare is the modeling part. And I also think that we can make that even better. Like, maybe if I just select this edge over here, then turn on the proportional editing tool by pressing O. And if I just scale this region down very slightly in the x-axis like this, or maybe it's a completely unnecessary thing. I won't be doing this thing. I'll undo, and it's already looking very nice. So I think we can go with this. Now moving ahead, the next thing that we're going to do is to model this simple third hand, which is for the seconds. And it is not a very complicated thing. Like you can see, we can easily model by using a cone. So here I'll press Shift A, then go to mesh and select the cone. Let's go to the edit mode, press S to scale this down like this. And let's move it up in the Z axis over here. I'll scale this up in the z-axis. Then I'll select this loop of vertices and scale this down like this. Now I'll rotate this in the x-axis by 90 degrees. And I want its position to be over here where we have the 3D cursor. So I'll hold Shift S and select selection to cursor like this. Then let's move it in the y-axis over here. After this, I'll go to the edit mode, press S to scale down this part like this. Then I'll be selecting this vertex over here, and let's push this back in the y-axis so that we can reduce the length of this seconds hand. And after this, I think I should go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad, and I should select these and slightly reduce their size further, then push this above in the z-axis. Other than this, I think that I can apply some bevel on this top part. So for this, I'll go to the edit mode, press Ctrl B to apply some bevel, and I'll make sure that the vertices do not overlap with each other. In the number of segments, I'll keep this to 4 or 5 or maybe 6. And in the width, I'll go with something very low like 0.01. Then after this, I'll right click to apply shade auto smooth. And now if I zoom out, you can see that we have its origin point over here, which means that if I try to rotate this by pressing R, then it's giving us a very weird rotation that we do not want. Instead, I want the rotation to happen from this point over here, where we have the 3D cursor also. So I have to set the origin point over here. So with this selected, right click and set origin to 3D cursor. Then if I press R to rotate it, let's say in the Z axis, then this is how the rotation will happen. For now, I'll keep the rotation to, let's say over here. I'll keep its length to something like this. And over here, I'll select these vertices also and push these slightly backwards in the local z axis. I can change the position of this second's hand, like I think I should slightly push it downwards, and I'll also change its rotation to something over here. Then to give it some material, I'll go to the material properties, and over here I'll type steel, and I'll be selecting this steel one. Then I'll create a duplicate of this material because I think I should be removing this from the base color. Or maybe we'll adjust the roughness also, like I'll change this to 0.25. It will depend on how smooth you want the surface to be. If you don't want to make these changes, you can go with the default ones. Now, other than this, I also think I should apply some subdivision surface modifier to this. So press Ctrl 1 to add the subdivision surface modifier. And other than this, there is nothing else in the second's hand that we need to do. Let's zoom out to check if anything else is required or not. I think I can select this and push it slightly forward in the local z axis, let's say like this, because right now its length is being reduced because of adding subdivision, because we have a single point over here, so it will show some weird behavior, but I think we can go with this length. Now, other than this, the next thing that we should be doing is to make this glass perfect. Like right now, you can see that it has some imperfections because of the noise texture that we added here. So what I'll do is I'll select all these and press delete. Then to remove this blurry effect from the glass, I'll go to the index of refraction value, which is IOR, and change this from 1.5 to, let's say, 1.2. And just with this single change, you can see how clearly we can see through the glass now. After this, I'll hide this for now. And if you remember, we added this Boolean modifier to this green circular disk. So to avoid any issues when we later on rotate something or make any changes, I'll be applying this modifier. So click here and select apply. Now if I press R to rotate it like this, you can see that the effect of Boolean modifier will still stay here. Now I'll again unhide the glass. And if you take a look at the reference image that we have here, you will notice that we also have another glass or a cutout like thing around this part where we have the date. And to create a similar thing over here, I'll be using a cube object, and I'll try to cut out a shape like this. Then we'll convert it into a separate class object. So to see how we'll do it, what I'll do is I'll be selecting the cube, which is this one, and we'll try to make its shape similar to this one in the reference image, like it's curved around the sides. So to make a similar thing over here, I'll first move it slightly above in the z-axis, then go to the top view. Let's also switch to the edit mode, and I'll be adding, let's say, 5 loop cuts over here. Then scale these up in the x-axis like this, then select these, scale these up in the x-axis as well, and then at last I'll select these and scale these in the x-axis. Then press A to select all. Let's slightly increase this in the y-axis like this, and also let's scale it up in the x-axis. Then I'll press Ctrl A to apply the scaling because I made the changes in the object mode. And whenever you make any changes in scaling or rotation in the object mode, it is usually suggested to apply the changes by pressing Ctrl A and selecting them. But yes, this thing is only applicable if you make those changes in the object mode. If you do it in the edit mode, then there's nothing to worry about. It won't create any problem. So coming back to the scene, I'll be adding the subdivision surface modifier to this to make this more smooth and curved. So press Ctrl 1, or maybe let's press Ctrl 2 to set the levels viewport to a value of 2. And let's also use the bevel modifier. I'll place it above subdivision. Then in the number of segments, I'll keep this to a value of 2. And in the amount, I'll try something like 0.01. Now after this, I'll select this glass, go to the edit mode. And currently, as you can see, it does not have any thickness, which doesn't really look very nice. So to give it some thickness, I'll press E to extrude this and S to slightly scale this up. After giving some thickness to the glass, we'll use the Boolean modifier to remove this part. So with the glass selected, I'll go to the modify properties, click on add modifier, then in generate, select the Boolean, and in the object, I'll select this cube. This will create this cutout region which you can see in the solid mode. Now if I select this and press H to hide, then we can see that we have created this cutout in the glass. I'll unhide this for now, and I'll go to the edit mode, and I think I need to make some changes here, like I'll very slightly scale this part down and maybe make some changes in the x-axis scaling to make this look a little bit more smooth. What you can also do is you can right click and select smooth vertices to make these smooth, and then you might have to adjust the scaling also. But this thing can work if you want more rounded or smooth edges. Then right click to apply shade or to smooth again. And I even think that we can maybe scale this down in the z-axis, and then we can use this only as the second glass object that we needed here. So I'll be scaling this down in the z-axis. Let's go to the side view and I'll push it down like this. And then to give it the glass material, I'll go to the material properties. Let's also move it slightly above. Now coming back here, I'll select this and click on glass, but I don't really want it to be exactly the same as the original glass material that we have here. I want it to have a slightly higher value of index of refraction. So I'll change this value to, let's say, 1.5, or maybe I should first duplicate this by clicking here, or you can also click over here and then change this value to 1.5 so that the changes will get applied only on this part. And this is how the glass look. To see how it will actually look in the final lighting, I think we should make the final changes in the lighting. Currently in the scene, we have this plane object on the top, which is emitting some white light, then this noise texture pattern, then we have this white plane at the back. But I think that it's not really giving us a very realistic lighting. Like, it does look like a nice simple lighting setup, but to make it look more cinematic, we can add some light of that particular color that represents luxury. Like, you must be knowing that different types of colors represent different moods and different emotions. Like the yellow color represents happiness, the red color represents something bold. Similarly, we have colors like purple color, which represents luxury. And since this is a luxury watch, I think we can add some purple color lighting to the scene. So what I'll do is I'll select this plane on the top, on which we currently have a very simple white color in the emission settings. But I think I'll increase the strength to zero point 0.6 instead of zero point 0.4. And what I can also do is I can change this color to something like the purple color. Let's keep this to over here, and let's also increase the brightness. And this is giving us a nice light purple color on the watch. Other than this, I think I'll be selecting this plane, and for now I'll remove this, and instead of this I'll be adding a new plane object in the scene. Let's move it in the y-axis over here. Let's scale this up, let's say 10 times. Then I'll move it up in the z-axis and rotate it in the x-axis like this. Let's say I keep the rotation to 30 or 35. Also, let's go to the side view and I'll change this to wireframe display. And I think I should move this forward in the y-axis and also move it above in the z-axis over here. And other than this, let's now give it some material. Basically, I want to give it some emission lighting so that it emits light from the front. And then we'll see what we have to do with this back plane. Maybe we'll make it something reflecting so that the light reflects and falls on the watch. Basically, the best way to get the perfect lighting for your setup is to try different types of lights or different types of lighting setups. Try to change their positions, the rotation, the colors, the strength. Basically, by trial and error method, you can get the perfect lighting for your scene. For now, with this plane selected, I'll go to the shader editor. Let's create a new material. And in this, I'll go to emission. And with the white color, in the emission color, I'll change the emission strength to, let's say, 7.5. This will add some white light in the scene that we'll need. And other than this, I'll be selecting this, or maybe first I should select this plane at the bottom. And currently it's looking very dull because all it has is this gray color material which has a low roughness and a high metallic value. But to give it some color, I'll go over here and change this to something like red but with some darkness. So we'll go with this. And for this plane at the back, I'll connect it again to the surface. But I don't really want that when I take a shot from the front, we should be seeing all this white light coming from the behind. Like I want that the effect of light should be there on the watch, but in terms of color of the plane, we should see something dark. So to achieve such a thing, we have to use a node in the shader editor, which is called is camera ray. To see how it works, I'll press Shift A, then search for is camera ray, and I'll place this over here for now. We'll understand how it works in just a few seconds. But before that, I'll be adding a mix shader node. So in the shader, I'll select mix shader and place this over here. And this node is basically used to combine two different shaders together. Like let's say on one hand we have this, and if I duplicate this, and in the base color, if I keep it to something like the dark purple color, and in the metallic strength I'll increase this to 1, and in the roughness I'll bring this down to 0.2, then if I connect this over here, the result that we'll see will be a mixture of both of these, and you can control the influence of both of these shaders by using this factor value. Also, I will bring this value down to 0 so that we can see how the reflecting purple color material looks. If I bring this to 0, then we'll be seeing the result of this principal BSDF node, which is creating the white emission. And if I bring this to 1, then we are seeing the result of this principal BSDF node, which is creating a purple reflecting background. So what I want is, in terms of lighting, we should be seeing the result of this white color lighting. And in terms of the material that this plane gets, we should be having this purple color reflecting surface. And this is where this is camera ray node will come into play. If I connect this to the factor in the mix shader, then what this does is that it allows the effect of the first shader, which is this white emission, throughout in the scene. But in terms of its display, which you can see here at the back, we get to see this second material. So you can use this is camera node to create such an effect. Now what I'll do is I'll press Shift A, and I think we should add a camera in the scene. Let's push it back in the Y axis over here. Also, it is slightly tilted right now and not in the correct position. So I'll press Alt R to reset its rotation, and let's also press Alt G to reset the location of the camera. Then push it back again in the Y axis, press RX and type 90. Now press 0 on the numpad, and this is what we see from the camera view. To ensure that we see only the camera view in the render preview mode, I'll click here in the output properties and enable the render region, and this is how the scene looks. We have a nice background at the back, which is having a nice purple color representing the color of luxury. Obviously, we need to change some strength of the light so that it appears more soft, but on a basic level, I think we are ready to proceed with the final lighting. Now, if I just go to the camera view, you can see that we are seeing a very big reflection of the light over here, which is being created because of this light in the front, basically this plane that we created. If we move it, then that reflection will go away. But we actually want this light over here so that we can see the reflections on the watch, but not on this plane at the back. And if you remember in the last chapter, I explained you the concept of light linking, which we used to solve this problem. And to use the same thing over here, with this selected, I'll go to the properties section, and here I'll type light linking. Then I'll click on the new button. Then I'll select this plane at the back, which is with the name plane.003. Then I'll again select this, and I'll drag and drop plane.003 into the light linking. Then I'll disable this, and now you can see that the reflections are gone. In a similar way, I'll now be selecting this plane at the back. Then I'll go to light linking, and I'll be selecting this plane which is at the bottom. So let's drag and drop it here and disable this. Also, I think I should push it slightly downwards in the z-axis. I'll keep this to minus 4.5 meters so that this reflection of the light appears proper. Now moving ahead, we are done with most of the parts, and I think we should rotate the watch so that we can see it from the front view properly. Currently we are able to see it like this, like you can see in the render preview. We are basically seeing the side view of the watch, but instead we want to see the front view, basically, which we'll see from here. But if I try to rotate it right now, you can see that we are noticing some issues, which are simply because of the fact that we have not yet applied all the modifiers. Especially if I select the straps here and try to rotate them, you can see that the rotation will be very weird no matter in which direction you try to rotate them. If you try x-axis, they rotate like this. If you try y-axis, they rotate like this. And even if you try the z-axis, the rotation is still very weird. So I'll go to the modify properties, and I'll make sure that I don't have to make any changes anywhere, because once applied, you cannot make these changes again. So just take care of this fact. And in this case, I don't really think I need to make any change in the array modifier, so I'll apply it. Similarly, in simple deform, I think I'll go with minus 140 only. So I'll apply this, then I'll use the mirror and apply this as well. And I'll keep the smooth by angle as it is, because it won't really create any problem in the rotation. It's only for how smooth the surface will be. So I'll keep it as it is. Other than this, I have the case, which will be the parent object for all the other objects. So I don't need to apply anything here. Also, what I can do is I go to the scene collection, and select each one of these. Like here we have the bezel, and I think that we can work without even applying the subdivision. So let's keep it as it is. Then in circle.002, we have this green disk, I guess. And just make sure that you have the Boolean modifier applied, because if you miss this step and do not apply it, there's a high possibility that you will face the error later. So just make sure you do not miss this step. Then in circle.003, we do not have anything to apply. But in circle.004, you can see that we have the Boolean modifier, and we used it to create this glass cutout, if you remember. Now you might think that applying the subdivision is not important, so you can directly apply Boolean, but I'll advise you against it. Like even if you try to apply this, then you will get this warning that the applied modifier was not first, so the result may not be as expected. So I think we should undo this. And first you have to apply subdivision, which is on the top, and then you go top to bottom. So on the second number we have Boolean, so we'll apply this. Then we have the circle.005, which is the circle object we used for the strap. So I think we can hide this from the scene. Then we have the cone, which is the second's hand. And in a similar way, let's check each one of these individually. Now over here, I have the logo. And in this, we have the plain.006 as the boolean, which was basically this circular thing we have in the logo. So I'll first apply the mirror modifier, then the boolean, and let's continue. Then again in this plain.007, we have the smaller logo, and in this one also we have the boolean. So let's apply these. Now I'll select all the parts of the watch and then press Ctrl A and select scale first and then rotation, so that when we rotate all of them like this, we won't have any issues in terms of rotation or even in scaling. But what I want is that instead of selecting all of them and rotating them at once, we make one of these objects as the parent object, and the rotation will then depend on that particular object. So ensure that you have selected all these parts of the watch first, which you can do by pressing A and then deselecting all these planes which are for the light and the camera. And once that is done, you have to hold the shift key and select that object that you want as the parent object. In this particular example, I want the case to be the parent object, so I'll select it at last with the shift key holded, and you will see that it is now highlighted with the yellow color. Then I'll press Ctrl P and set parent to object. Now if I select the case, press R to rotate it in the x-axis by, let's say, 90 degrees, then this is how the rotated watch looks. Now I'll select the camera and push this back in the y-axis, and let's also move it slightly above in the z-axis so that it properly covers the entire watch model. And other than this, I'll go to the render properties, and in the viewport settings in the sampling, I'll turn on denoisy so that we do not get that grainy look on the render. We'll use the same method of adding the text objects and placing them depending on the reference image. So first of all, I'll unhide the reference image. I'll select it. Let's rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Let's also go to the front view to set its position properly. I'll push it slightly in the z-axis like this. Let's also increase its opacity, and I think that we can work with this. So let's now press Shift A, go to text, and here I'll rotate this in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Then go to the edit mode. Let's remove all this, and let's also enable the X-ray mode first. Then I'll type Rolex for this part of the text in the watch. Then I'll scale this down by pressing S, and I think we should move this slightly forward in the y-axis so that we can see it in the render preview here. Then I'll again go to the front view. Let's scale this down. Let's also hide this camera from the scene for now. Then I'll select the text. Let's place this over here. And for its font, it is set to the default right now, but I'll change this by clicking here, and I'll search for this Garamond font. I'll select this bold one and click on open font. Then I'll press S to scale this up like this, then push it in the x-axis over here, slightly scale this down, and let's increase the scaling in the x-axis like this so that it somewhat matches the background reference image. Then I'll create its duplicate, move this down over here. Let's remove all this, and I'll type this text over here on the second line. Now let's return back to the object mode. Press S to scale this down slightly, and I'll move this in the x-axis over here. Let's scale it down again and adjust its position and the size. Now let's do the same for the lower text. So I'll select the Rolex text and duplicate it, place this over here. Let's change the text. Now I'll adjust its scaling and the position. And I also think that instead of the current font, let's try to change it to something else. Like I think we can go with this Aldrich regular font. It's not the exact same that we need, but it's somewhat close. So we'll go with this. Also, you can see that its origin point is located over here. But to keep it in the center, I'll right click, set origin to geometry. And let's do the same thing with the other ones also. Now moving ahead, let's write this lower text which is superlative chronometer officially certified. And for this, I've selected this middle text over here. Press Shift D to create a duplicate and move this down. And for its font, I'll select this one. I think we can go with this, or you can select the default font also. Let's remove this and type the required text. Now I'll scale this down by pressing S, and let's also push it slightly downwards over here. Then create its duplicate and place this over here. Let's change the text to officially certified. Now let's place this over here and scale this slightly down in the z-axis like this. Let's do the same thing with this one also. I'll slightly scale this down in the z-axis. And with this, we now have this near to perfect model of the watch ready. We have added all the details like we can see in the reference image, and it looks more or less complete. The only thing which I can remember is still missing is this back part of the strap, which in most of the cases isn't really visible in the render, but we'll still model it, or basically we'll give it a very simple shape or a very simple structure. We'll simply add two cylinders here which will act as the rods, and we'll connect a plane object with some curve, and it will act as the lock or basically the back part of the strap. So for this, I'll select this, then I'll hold the shift key and right click here to keep the 3D cursor over here. Press shift A and add the cylinder. Let's rotate it in the x-axis by 90, and it's also rotated in the z-axis by 90 degrees. Let's scale this down by pressing S and scale this up in the x-axis like this and adjust its position and the scaling. Then go to the side view and let's zoom out. Press Shift D to create a duplicate and place this over here. I think we should slightly scale this and move this in the y-axis over here. Let's try to change the angle to take a look at it. Now to select this one, I'll select one of the vertices in the X-ray mode and press Ctrl L to select the entire loop, and I'll check it from different angles. Like I think I should push it slightly forward and also reduce its scaling. Let's also check it in the render preview mode. It must be having the steel material only, which we apply to the straps like you can see over here. Now to add a plane here that will close this strap, I'll press Shift A then add a plane. Let's rotate this in the x-axis like this, and I'll first scale it down in the z-axis, then push it downwards like this. Let's go to the side view, and I think I'll select these, press G to move this where we have the 3D cursor, and other than this I'll go to the side view again, then select the vertices on the bottom, basically these ones, and push them over here. You will have to make these adjustments depending on the rotation of the plane in your scene. Here in my case, I think I should move these vertices here in the x-axis, and then I'll select these and place these over here. We're giving it a very simple and basic shape. And to make this curved now, I'll be adding some loop cuts here like this. Then turn on the proportional editing tool from here, or you can use the shortcut which is to press O. Then I'll select this one in the middle, press G and use the scroll wheel, and press Y to move this in the Y axis. And since we have enabled the proportional editing tool, so the effect of movement will also be visible on the surrounding or the neighboring edges like this. So feel free to adjust these. And apart from this, what I'll do is I'll keep my cursor over here and press L. This will select this plane, and I'll press P to separate it into a new object. Then while being in the object mode, I'll select it, go to object and set the origin to geometry. Then I'll right click to apply shade auto smooth. The reason for separating this was that if I directly apply the shade auto smooth to the entire strap, then in the render you can see that we will lose some of the details that we had in the strap. The effect might not be visible very much right now, but it does affect the noise texture that we apply to the material or the details if we have them. So just for that, I made it into a new object and shaded it smooth. Then if you want, you can give it some thickness. You can go to the edit mode, press E to extrude it like this. Then another thing that you can do is you can apply some bevel modifier to this. All these things are completely optional because this is something that you can even skip if you want. Like, I think it won't be visible in the final render anyways. Let's also apply some subdivision to this, and I think we'll finalize this here. And now after this, let's go to the front view, or basically the camera view, in both the solid mode as well as the render preview mode. And now all what's left is this crown that we have here. Like you can see in the reference image, we have a crown here. And before I model this, I think I should first select all the objects in the scene and parent them to the case of the watch. So I'll select all of these, then I'll deselect the plane, and let's ensure that we have not selected anything unnecessary in the scene. I have to select only the parts that are belonging to the watch, and then at last I'll select the case, then press Ctrl P and set parent to object. We are noticing some error here, which might be because of the rotation or the scaling issues. So what I'll do is I'll press Ctrl A and apply scale first. And because of doing this, we have these texts that are losing their positions. So I'll undo this. And now to solve this issue, we have to convert these texts into mesh objects. And to do this thing, I'll first hide this glass from the scene. Then I'll select the three texts over here and the one at the bottom also. Then I'll right click, and in the object settings, I'll go to convert to and select mesh. This will convert these into mesh type. Like if I go to the edit mode now, you can see that it's converted into mesh. Whatever you will type here will no longer be added in the text. So with all of these selected, I'll press Ctrl A, select rotation, and then select scale. Now after this, I'll unhide the glass object. So I'll go to circle and unhide this. Then select all the parts of the watch. Let's press A to select all and deselect the ones that we do not need. So I'll deselect the planes and even this reference image. Then press Ctrl A, apply rotation. Then press Ctrl A and apply the scale also. Then to parent the objects, I'll hold the shift key and select this case. Then press Ctrl P and set parent to object. Now this thing might have been a little bit confusing for some of you, so I'll repeat the process that we did. First, I tried to parent the objects to this case, but we faced the error that some of the objects were being rotated very weirdly, and it was happening because we changed the rotation in the object mode. So the solution, as I told you before, was to press Ctrl A and apply the rotation and scaling. But because of doing that, some of the text objects were getting displaced. And to solve that, we converted those text objects into mesh, which solved our issue. And then we applied the rotation and scale, which enabled us to easily parent all the objects which are belonging to the watch to this case. Now, if I press R to rotate the case, you can see that all the parts will begin to rotate together. Similarly, if I move it anywhere, then just by making the changes to the case, we are able to see the same result on all the other parts. So moving ahead, let's continue with modeling this crown. So I'll go to the front view and we have the reference image here. So press Shift A and the object that we'll be adding is a cylinder. Let's rotate this in the x-axis, or maybe I've set the 3D cursor at the wrong location. So I'll delete this and I want the 3D cursor to be placed over here where I want the crown. So with the Shift key hold it, I'll right click here, then go to the front view, press Shift A, go to mesh and add a cylinder. Let's rotate it in the x-axis by 90, and let's also rotate it in the z-axis by 90 degrees. Then go to the edit mode, press S to scale this down. Let's also disable proportional editing tool, and we'll adjust its size depending on the reference image. We won't be keeping it exactly the same, but we'll use it only as a reference of the proportions. Now I'll push it in the x-axis and place this over here. Let's go to the edit mode and scale this in the x-axis. This will be the main part of the crown that will be visible from the outside. Now let's change the angle, and what I'll do is I'll press 2 for the edge select mode. Select this edge loop on this side. Press Ctrl B to apply some bevel so that I can make this part rounded. And let's also see it at the same time in the render preview. Let's right click to apply shade smooth. And I also think that we should give it some material. So I'll go to the material properties and select steel 1. We'll change it later on if we want, but let's go with this for now. Then I'll go to the edit mode, press 3 for the face select mode, select this face, press E to extrude it slightly like this. press Ctrl B to apply bevel to this as well. And in this one, I'll slightly increase the number of segments by 1 or 2 and left click. I'll keep the width low. Then I'll be selecting every alternate edge over here with the shift key holded, and I'll scale them down to create this type of pattern that you can see in the reference image. So let's select every alternate edge. Now after this, I'll press Ctrl B to apply bevel, and we'll reduce the number of segments to 1, or maybe let's keep this to 2. Then I'll press S to scale these down like this, and you can see that we are getting a nice result in the render preview mode. Then while being in the object mode, I'll go to the modify properties, and first I'll add the bevel modifier to give this some roundness or some smooth look, and the number of segments I'll change this to 2. Then I'll also press Ctrl 1 for some subdivision modifier. Let's keep this to 1 only, I think, or maybe let's keep this to 2. It's giving us a much better appearance. Then I'll go to the edit mode, press 3 to select this face over here. And for now, since I have to model the rest of the crown, I'll disable the real-time display of bevel and the subdivision modifier so that I can focus on modeling. Then I'll press I to inset, press E to extrude it like this, and here I want a screw like pattern, so I'll be adding some loop cuts here. Then press Ctrl B to add some bevel to these. Then let's zoom in, and it's giving us a very weird geometry because some extra edges have been selected here, or maybe it's because of this weird shape of the face that we have over here. So to solve this, I think instead of insetting this face, I'll be adding a new cylinder and we'll connect it to the crown. So press Shift A, go to Mesh and add a cylinder. Let's zoom out and rotate it in the X-axis by 90 and also in the Z-axis by 90 degrees. Let's scale this down just like before. Then I'll scale it up in the X-axis to give this some length. Let's scale it down like this, and we can go with this size. Let's move it in the X-axis while being in the object mode over here. Then I'll right click to apply shade auto smooth. Let's now go to the edit mode, press Ctrl R to add some loop cuts here, and after this I'll press Ctrl B and bevel these, press 2 for the vertex selection mode. And what I'll do before this is I'll select both the crown and this thing which will be made into a screw later on, and I'll move these in the X-axis like this. Then with both of these selected and with this outer part of the crown selected at last, I'll press Ctrl J to join them together, and then I'll be selecting this particular edge loop in the middle for each of these loops that we beveled. So let's select each of these and press S to scale these down. And I think that we are doing something wrong here, so I'll undo this and get back to the step where we beveled these. I'll press Ctrl B and keep the number of segments to a value of 2, but I'll increase their width slightly. Then I'll select these with the Shift and the Alt key holded. I'll select all these edge loops one by one, basically these 4. Press S to scale these down like this and return back to the object mode. I think now it looks much better. Then I'll select this, and with the outer part of the crown selected, I'll press Ctrl J to join them together into a single object. Then I'll go to the edit mode, press A to select all, and in the materials, I'll be removing this empty slot and I'll assign this steel material to all of these, and this will give us a nice crown that we can use. And other than this, I think I should select this and slightly bevel this to give this a smoother and round appearance. And now it looks perfect. Obviously, it's not the same as the reference image, but as I said before, it's only for reference and we are not exactly copying it. If you want to copy it, it's also not a very complicated thing. Like, you just have to select this part of the crown by pressing the L key with the cursor over here. Then you can maybe scale this up in the Z-axis. Then you can adjust its scaling in the X-axis and you'll get the result that you need. But in this case, I'll go with this. After this, I'll move this in the X-axis over here. And I also think that I should create an empty space in the case of the watch in which the crown goes. Currently, it's passing through the mesh, which isn't really very ideal. So with this selected, I'll go to the modify properties, click on add modifier, then in the generate, select boolean, and let's scroll down. Then in the object, select the crown. And now if I press Alt C, you can see that we have this empty area here. If you want, you can apply all these modifiers to finalize the boolean. So let's apply the boolean also. Now if I select this crown and move it, then this is how the empty space is looking in the case. Let's undo this to place it back over here. And with this, we are finally done with the entire modeling of the luxury watch. And all what's left is making some minor adjustments in the material to make it even more perfect. And of course, the animation part. So first of all, let's create a simple animation with the camera. So for this, I'll unhide the camera. So currently it's placed over here, but let's say I push it in the y-axis to this point, and then I want the animation to go like the camera basically moves back like this and gives us this shot. It is a very simple animation where we only have to move the camera backwards in the y-axis. So this can be one of the shots that we can create for the animation. And yes, in total, I'm thinking of creating three shots. The first one will be this, where we zoom out of the watch like this. Then for the other one, we'll have a close-up animation of this crown. Basically, we'll move it like this in the x-axis and then it'll go inside. So I want one of the shots to be like this. And for the third shot, we'll try to create a rotating animation of the watch. Like maybe we'll rotate the watch, something like this. And we'll do that in the end. And yes, while doing this, I also noticed that the crown is not parented to the case. So let's undo, then select the crown, then with the shift key hold it, select the case, press Ctrl P and set the parent to object. Now coming to the first animation, I'll change this window from the shader editor to the timeline editor. So click here and change this to the timeline. And by default, we have a total of 250 frames here. So what I'll do is I'll be creating the first animation for a total of 120 frames. So with this selected here, I'll press I to fix the position of the final frame, or maybe I should push this over here at the frame 96 so that the animation will be shorter and we'll have some extra frames in the end. Then initially at the frame number 1, I want this to be placed over here in the y-axis, basically the region where we see this black part because of the case of the watch. So I'll press I to insert a keyframe here, then I'll press the space bar to play the animation. Now I think that around the frame number 36 you can see this part of the light which is being reflected on the glass and it doesn't really look very nice. I think we can fix this thing by selecting this plane, and at the frame 96 I want it to be over here, but before that I should move it slightly above, let's say over here. Press I to insert a keyframe, and now let's play the animation like this. It'll basically come down as we zoom out and then it will spread the light evenly and we won't notice such reflections on the glass. Previously we had a very close view of the glass so the reflections were being visible, but for that part we have now shifted this plane above which was emitting the light. So the problem is now gone and we have a nice animation of the camera being zoomed out. So currently we have a very simple basic animation with no ease in or ease out effect, and as I explained to you in the previous chapter, in order to make the animations feel a little bit smoother, it is suggested to go to the graph editor and make some changes in the graph. Like in this particular case, we only changed the y-axis location. So I'll change this window first to the graph editor, and then with the camera selected, I'll go to camera action, and then in object transform, I'll be hiding all these except the y location. Then click on the period key in the numpad to keep the focus only on this graph. Then use the middle mouse key and the control key to adjust this view. Select this handle and this one, basically the right handle of the first keyframe and the left handle of the second keyframe. You have to select these two and then scale these down in the x-axis to bring these closer. In the resize menu, I'll change this to -1. I've already explained the reason for doing this in the previous chapter in which we created the serum bottle animation. But yes, I'll again explain it for you. Previously, without this effect, you can see that the animation is very simple and somewhat linear. Like if I play this, the camera simply moves backward and there is no slow or fast effect. But if I scale this down in the x-axis and change this again to -1 and now play the animation, then you will notice that there's some gain of speed in this area where we have this type of slope. This effect will be much more visible if I scale this down in the x-axis further. I'll change this x value to let's say 2. And now let's play the animation again. And this time the change must have been visible in a much better way, especially in the object mode over here. You can take a look at it again. In the middle part, the speed of the camera was a little bit higher as compared to the ends. And this was the purpose of changing the position of these handles. And with this, we have now completed the first animation for our scene. And now to create the other two animations, there are many ways, like you can either create a duplicate of this file and do the changes in that file, or else you can go over here where you have the option to add a new scene, and then you can go to full copy to create a copy of this scene with all the objects and the lighting and everything else. And then you can switch the scene from here. You will get the list of all the duplicated or all the scenes basically in this list. But I won't be doing that either. And I'll be opting for a very simple method, which is to keep everything in the same scene but work with different cameras. Like by default, we usually work with only one camera, and so whenever you press 0 on the numpad, you enter into the camera view and you can escape the camera view. So the things are very simple, but if you add an extra camera in the scene, then you have to tell the software that which camera will be the active camera, like which of the camera has to be used for rendering. For example, if I press Shift A and add a camera in the scene, then you have to tell Blender whether it has to use this camera over here or this one. Because if you press 0 on the numpad, then this will take you into the camera view of this previous camera, and it is happening because it is the active camera. To explain this in a much better way, I'll go to the scene properties here, and here you can see that we have this camera option which allows you to select that which camera will be the active one. Like if I select camera.001, then the view will change to the second camera view, and you can notice that if I try to move it around, you can see the changes happening in the camera view as well. So you can select the required camera from here. Now my advice to you would be that first you should render the first 120 frames of the animation using this particular camera, and then you should render the remaining frames for the upcoming animation with the other camera. So to do this thing, I'll change this end value to 120, and to render this, I'll first go to the render properties, and I have all the settings properly turned on. I will change this to 1024. You can keep this value to something even lower, like let's say 512 or 256. It will simply change the sample count, which controls how much details will be visible in the render. If you have a lot of time and you can spend that time in the rendering process, keep this value to something very high like 4096 if you want. But for most of you, you might not be having that much time. So I'll advise you to keep this value to 512. It'll give you a decent result. Also, don't forget to turn on the denoisy option in the render. And more importantly, enable the use GPU option. Otherwise, you will be spending a lot of time because this feature will be using the CPU, which will be a lot slower as compared to the GPU. So do ensure to turn this on. And other than this, I think there is nothing else that we have to change anywhere. Maybe we can go to the color management also. And in this, I'll change the look to, let's say, medium high contrast, or maybe we can go with the default one only. It's giving us a nice contrast already with the green color inside and the purple light. So I don't think we need to change anything else here. You can just go to the output properties, and we'll go with this landscape mode with 1920 and 1080 pixels in X and Y. In the previous one, we went for the portrait where these values were reversed, and it used to give that preview of what you see in Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. And this one is the landscape, so it's that typical aspect ratio of YouTube videos that you see in the landscape mode. So we'll go with this, and you can select the folder here in the output path by clicking here and selecting that particular location where you want to save the file. Then in the media type, I advise you to select image. If you want, you can select video also, but if due to any reason like power failure or software crash or anything else, your rendering stops in the middle, then you would have to re-render everything from start and all your progress will be lost. So I'll advise you to go with the images option, and then you can import all those frames in a video editing software like let's say DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, so that you can convert it into a video again. So once all that is done, you can click on render and render the animation. And yes, before that, there's one more important thing that I forgot, and it is to animate this seconds hand. Currently, it's static throughout the animation, but what we'll do is we'll give it some rotation in every 24 frames, which is 1 second, and the value by which we'll rotate it will be 6 degrees. And the maths behind that calculation is it has to cover a total of 360 degrees in one rotation, and there are 60 seconds which we need to cover. So every time the seconds hand moves, it'll move by 360 degrees divided by 60 seconds, meaning 6 degrees per second. So we'll rotate this by 6 degrees. And first of all, I'll take this pointer here at the frame number 1, and let's go to the front view for now. Then with the second hand selected, I'll press I to insert the first keyframe. Then I'll take the pointer to frame 23. I'll press I again. And in fact, I can delete the first one. We don't even need that. Then at the frame 24, I want this to immediately rotate in the Y axis by 6 degrees. So ensure you have 6 degrees over here in the rotation and press I. What this will do is throughout the first 23 frames, there will be no movement or change in rotation of the second's hand. Then immediately when it crosses the first second, it will get rotated by 6 degrees. In a similar way, I'll take this now to frame 47, press I to insert a keyframe. Then for the next one, I will rotate this again in the y-axis by 6 degrees and press I to insert the next keyframe. Then I'll take this to frame 71. Basically, I'm taking a gap of 24 frames, and just before the 24th frame of that particular sequence, I insert a keyframe with that old value of rotation. And then for the next one, I rotate this in y-axis by 6 degrees and insert the keyframe. So let's take a look at the animation till now. So it looks pretty nice. And so I'll continue with adding the rotation. And we are done with the animation of the second's hand. So finally, I think we are ready to render this animation. So let's click on render and render animation. So I rendered everything and this is our first animation. It looks pretty clean, and so I think we can move forward to creating the second animation. I'll use the same timeline. I'll change the start option to 121, and here let's keep this to 240 for now. If needed, we'll change it later on. And yes, at the frame 120, I'll select all of these and press I so that the animation information gets stored at the frame 120, and then at frame 121 I'll be selecting this case of the watch, and for this part of the animation also I'll be using this same camera. The only thing that I want in this animation is the case of the watch should rotate. Like, you can take a look at this final animation that we'll be making. I want to create this simple rotating animation of the watch for the second one. So to create it, I have selected the case at the frame 121, and I'll first rotate this in the x-axis like this. I'll keep this value in rotation x to 240. Then let's change the rotation in the y-axis. Let's keep this to something around 210, and I think I should rotate this in the z-axis also, something like this for the first frame. So I'll keep this to 162, and I'll press I to insert the first keyframe. Then I want an animation of around 100 frames, like I'm keeping this to 216, and at this frame I want the animation to be like the object rotates again. Let's say in the x-axis, let's keep this to something like this, and in the y-axis I'll keep this to something like minus 180, and then in the z-axis value I'll keep this to maybe 190. Then I'll also bring it forward like this in the y-axis, and I also think I should move it slightly downwards like this. So you can change these things depending on how you want the animation to appear. Let's see how this one will look. I'll press I to insert another keyframe here and press the space bar to play the animation. And we're getting a very nice, simple animation of the watch rotating and moving ahead in the y-axis, basically moving forward. So I think we can go with this. The only thing is that at the frame 216, I think we can bring it even closer and drop it in the z-axis slightly like this. Let's press I again to insert another keyframe, and let's play the animation one more time. And I think the preview is looking perfect. All we need to do now is to work on the graph editor to make the animation look a little bit smoother. And of course, we'll be adding animation to the hands of the clock also, basically the second's hand. I think I should do it first because the last time I forgot to do it. So I'll enable X-ray mode, and then I'll be selecting this second's hand. Then I'll go to the frame number 143, press I to insert a keyframe, and then at frame 144, I'll rotate this in the local y-axis by 6 degrees. Then press I to insert a keyframe and do the same procedure for the remaining keyframes also. And with this, we are done with animating the seconds hand of the watch. And now we can go to the graph editor to make the rotation animation and also the animation where we change the position of the watch a little bit smoother. I'll go to the graph editor window, and I'll be selecting the case. Then in the circle, I'll go to circle action, and in object transform, I have all these, but the ones that I really need are the Y location and the three rotation values. So first of all, I'll hide all of these except Y location. Then press the period key on the numpad. Let's zoom out so that we can see the graph properly. And after that, I'll be selecting these two handles and scale them down in the x-axis like this and change this to -1. This will make the overall animation look smoother. If you want, you can make it even more smoother by increasing the scaling x value. But for now, I think it will work for our animation. So we'll go with this. Then I'll go for the X rotation and let's view the graph. Let's zoom out and I'll be selecting these two. Let's scale these down in the x-axis and change this value to -1. Then similarly, let's do the same thing with the y and the z-axis rotation. And with this, we are done with the entire animation, including the changes in the graph editor. So I think we are ready to render this animation as well. Just make sure to change the output path if you want to. But if you want, you can go with the same one because the frame numbers are different, so it won't really create any issue for you. So go to render and select the render animation. Now the rendering is done and this is the second animation that we just cleaned. Let's create one more last animation where we'll have this crown of the watch moving in the x-axis and getting into the case and maybe even rotating. And I think that if you're making a trailer or an actual commercial for a luxury watch, like in this case we have Rolex. So in those cases, maybe the first shot that you show in the ad should be this crown animation only. Like you can show this as removed from the case, then it moves into it and maybe rotates. And only after that, the seconds hand actually begin to move because in almost all of the watches that I have seen, if you slightly pull this out, you can change the time and when you push it back, the watch again restarts and turns on. So for the first shot, you can create this animation of the crown. Then maybe in the second shot, you can add this rotating animation of the watch. And then in the third one, I will suggest you to add this animation of the zoom out that we created initially. And yes, you might be thinking that how will you know that which shots should be placed first and which ones should be placed in the ending? And the answer to this is really very simple. You just have to try different types of things before you get the perfect results. There can be so many different possibilities of animating this watch and the camera. Like you can try it yourself. You can maybe select this and create a rotating animation of the watch. Even if you restrict the rotation in the Z axis, you can create many different types of rotation. Or maybe you can rotate it like in the Y axis and then rotate this in the local Y axis like this. So you can create a 360-degree rotation or anything else. There are so many possibilities that you can make. You can work with the lighting to create different types of animation, just like we did in the last chapter. So first step is always to think about what kind of animations you can make with the product that you have in front of you. And for that, you can refer to so many websites like Pinterest, or you can go to social media like YouTube or Instagram. You will find so many similar works. You can take inspiration from them, understand why something worked and why the other thing didn't work. Or you can go to the official handles of different brands and try to understand how they animate their product, how they showcase their product, how they visualize it. So, all these are the things that will help you in this journey of product animation. It's not just about creating the animation, it's more about understanding why we are doing something. Like in this case, you can see that because this was a luxury product, so I decided we'll go for some purple lighting. Also, another thing that you can do to make your work even more interesting is you can select this plane over here on the top, which is having this noise texture, and you can go to the shader editor, let's say. Then I can add the vector mapping and the texture coordinate node, and you can even try to change this z-axis location so that the noise texture actually feels alive. Currently, it's completely static, so the light will also look static, but maybe you can animate this value. Like you can just press I to animate it. Then you can change this value for the upcoming frames and you can see the change happening real time in the render preview mode also. So this is another type of animation that you can make. In fact, any of these values can be animated. So there are endless possibilities that you can use in your favor to create any number of animations. It's just that you have to bring your creativity into action. You have to understand what type of animation will look good try to experiment with different types of animations. Maybe a lot of times you will observe that your time will be wasted because the thing that you were thinking might not work, but you will get some learning from it. And then you can apply that learning in the next project or the next animation that you create. So, all these things are really very important in this journey. And I really hope you learn not just the technical aspects from this course, like modeling, shading, working with lighting, making your models look more realistic, but also how different things come together to make an animation. So now I think we should come back to the animation part and let's make the third animation. So for that, I'll first of all change the start to 241 and ending, let's keep this to 300 or maybe let's keep this to 330. We'll see how much frames we need later on. I'll keep this to 241 and for the case, I will reset the rotation by pressing Alt R and then rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees. Press I to insert a keyframe here, but for the frame 240, I'll select this and duplicate this over here so that the previous animation stays as it is. Now, if you remember, we added this extra camera here for the second type of animation that we want to create. I don't want to make any changes in the initial camera, basically this old one, which we used to create two different animations. So I'll select this camera here and to make this the active camera, I'll go to the scene properties and in camera section, I'll select the camera.001. Then I'll move this in the y-axis over here. Let's rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees and I want something like this shot only where I can see this crown. Maybe I should push it slightly downwards like this. And I think for the initial shot, this camera angle is completely perfect. Like I can show this here in the x-axis. Then I'll press I to insert a keyframe. After this, let's say at frame 288. Okay, I forgot to insert a keyframe for this camera. So I'll take this back, again rotate it in the x-axis by 90 degrees, push it backwards in the y-axis over here. Let's keep the rotation proper like this. And let's also push it slightly in the x-axis over here. And this looks completely perfect. Then I'll press I to insert a keyframe here. And now I'll take the pointer to, let's say, frame 288 and then I'll select this crown and at this frame number I want this crown to be at this position over here. So let's push it slightly more inwards like this and press I to insert a keyframe and we have created a simple animation of it moving in the x-axis. But I also think that we should have a rotating animation like which starts from here, let's say on the frame 270. I'll press I to insert a keyframe here and then till the frame 288 I want this to rotate in the x-axis by, let's say, 360 degrees and press I to insert another keyframe. Let's see how this animation will look. We have a nice rotating animation, but I think it's moving in the wrong direction. So at the frame 288, I'll rotate this in the x-axis by minus 720. It will make the rotation happen in the opposite direction. Then I'll press I again and let's watch the animation one more time. And this time I think it's perfect. We can go with this. And I think I'll keep the ending frame at 300. I want this animation to be short, or maybe let's keep this to 330 only. What I'll do is after this frame where the crown goes inside, we can have a zoom out animation of the camera like this. So let's try to create it. Let's say I keep this pointer over here and with the camera selected, press I. Then I'll take this to 312. Then I'll go to the object data properties and in the x-axis, I'll change this to 0 to bring this into center and I'll reduce the location by value to, let's say, over here. Press I to insert another keyframe and this is how the animation will look. Again, we can see that because of the front plane, we are getting some reflection of light here. So what I'll do is, just like before, I'll be selecting this plane over here and I'll copy paste the animation. I'll select these two, press Shift D and place them over here. Or maybe I've selected the wrong keyframes. I'll select these two and duplicate them, place them over here. Let's scale these down to bring them closer. And this is how the animation will look. I think we can go with this. This is completely perfect for the kind of animation that we wanted to create. The only thing is that we have to animate the hands of the clock again. So I'll select the hand. So I'll take this to frame 263. And if you remember, I told you that this will be the initial shot, that is just before these first shots that we created. So as a result, what I'll try to do is I'll rotate this in the y-axis to somewhere over here so that we can see it in this shot also. Like you can see this second's hand. I'll slightly rotate this over here and let's round this off to minus 60. Yes, this thing will work. So we'll go with these values. I'll press I to insert a keyframe and let's move it over here. Press Shift D and place this one at frame 241 also, because before that we have the previous animation, if you remembered, till the frame 240 we have this animation, and then on the frame 241 we have this new animation. So do ensure to add a keyframe here also. Then I'll zoom out to avoid any confusion. Then at the frame 263, I have this keyframe again, and then at 264, I will rotate this by 6 degrees in the y-axis. So I'll change this to minus 54, then press I, and let's do the same thing with the other parts of the animation also. So over here, I will set another keyframe by pressing I. Then for 288, I'll change this to minus 48. Press I to insert a keyframe. Let's do the same thing here also. And finally, we are done with this animation also. So we can render this now. Let's go to the output properties and just to ensure that you have the correct output path here. I've set this to temporary right now, but I'll change it once I've done with the recording. So you can set this path and also make sure the settings in the render properties are also correct. And most importantly, do ensure that in the scene properties you have this correct camera selected. If it has the older camera, then the scene will be slightly different, like especially over here in the initial part, the older camera will record from this angle and this new camera will record from this angle. So make sure you select the correct camera here and then go to render and select render animation. Now this is the third animation which is rendered. And now coming back to the scene, we are almost done with everything. The only thing that I would like to add here is that you can give some really interesting look to this steel material. Currently it's looking very flat, but if you want, you can make it look even better. I know I should have explained this before rendering the animation, but you can take a look at it right now, or maybe you can just understand it for the sake of getting some new knowledge. So what you can do is you can add some streaks to the steel material that will make it look more realistic. First of all, I'll set this black pointer in the color ramp to over here and this white pointer to over here. Then with the noise texture selected, I'll press Ctrl T to add the texture coordinate and the mapping node. Then I'll take the object and connect it to vector. I'll increase the scaling to 10 for now, and this will add these weird patches on the steel material because of the noise texture. But to get the perfect result, what I can do is I can increase the scaling in the x-axis, and this will give you these nice streaks that is giving us a better look for the steel. In fact, I can increase this to, let's say, 200, and even if you look at it from a distance, you'll be able to see these streaks very clearly, and it will give a nice look to the steel metal. So if you want, you can add these two nodes in the steel texture and create this beautiful look for it. And yes, once you're done with rendering all the three animations, you can edit them in any software like DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro or anything else. And at that time, try to use things like dynamic zoom. Like you can also see that in the course trailer. I've applied that to almost all the animations, basically all the renders. It really gives it a very nice and a natural look. Like if you notice, the camera is otherwise static, but if you have the dynamic zoom turned on, then the camera zooms in or zooms out depending on the settings. Other than that, you can work on color correction in the editing software, or maybe you can add some effects or transitions. But coming to the basics, you have now understood a lot more in terms of product visualization, in terms of product animation, and with this, we now come to the end of the second chapter. In this one, you learned about modeling this watch, creating all these materials, setting up the scene, working on lighting with some new methods, understanding about presenting luxury items like this watch. Then we also learned to create these three different animations. So this was all in the chapter number 2, and in the next chapter, which will be the chapter number 3, we'll create a product animation of a premium speaker, and during that process we'll understand some more concepts related to modeling, shading, animation, lighting, and some new techniques. So if you enjoyed watching this chapter, then do hit the like button, and if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, then do subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you can get timely updates about the upcoming chapters. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.